Chapter 246. Carrie and Dean came to the conspicuous steps above the hall. Carrie cleared his throat and said in a clear voice, "Everyone." His high-pitched voice immediately attracted the attention of the nobles who were chatting in the hall. The hall quieted down in an instant. He adjusted his necktie and showed a gentleman's smile. "Welcome to St. Petersburg. Today is a grand day. As you all know, the Temple of Elements has recently given birth to a new epic medal winner. In the 300 years of history of the giant wall of Sylvia, there are only 17 people who have won this medal. Every one of them is a person who can influence an era." He smiled as he faced the eyes of the nobles. "I believe that you have heard of the name of the new textile machine. You have also seen the masterpiece given by the God of Light." Some of the nobles had a smile on their faces. "I have seen it at home. This is a great work of art. Praise the Almighty God of Light." Carrie smiled faintly and said, "The emergence of the new textile machine does not only increase the efficiency of weaving, but is also an enlightenment given to us by the radiant God. This is a grand blueprint. In the future, everyone will see many new great masterpieces that will make our lives more superior and better." There was a round of applause. Carrie smiled. "I won't say too much. Tonight is just a banquet. Enjoy yourselves to your heart's content. Let's invite the protagonist of this banquet, the winner of the epic medal, the creator of the new textile machine, Mr. Dean." Dean, who was waiting next to him, stepped on the steps. He stood at the highest place in the audience. It was the brightest and the most eye-catching place. He looked around at the many nobles and suddenly remembered many years ago when he was still a scavenger. At that time, the protagonist of the banquet was the daughter of the Mel family, Sarah Mel. At that time, he was just a nobody in the dark corner whom no one paid attention to. "Thank you all for coming." Dean calmly smiled. There was no timidity or weakness on his face. He looked at Rudolph, who had a smile on his face. There was no hostility on Rudolph's face as he clapped his hands to congratulate him. If it was an average person, they would think that the other side had buried the hatchet. But from his experience of hunting monsters, he could feel the coldness hidden under the layer of smile. Moreover, from the Pinetown market, he could see that this matter would not end here. However, he didn't give a cold look. On the contrary, he also revealed a gentle smile. Dean glanced at the other nobles. In addition to Rudolph, there was Abel from the Milan family, Matt from the Mel family, and more than 10 other extraordinary people. Old Feline was standing in the crowd. He was leaning on crutches. His back was slightly stooped, but there was a gratified smile on his face. Dean looked at Dean, who was standing on the stage. There was a bit of astonishment on Matt's face. He didn't expect that the teenager would be the protagonist of tonight's event. He was also the winner of the era medal. Matt's face turned blue and red as he thought of the previous irony. There was a bit of anger in his eyes, but he quickly restrained himself. There was a faint smile on his face. Dean saw Ania in the periphery of the crowd. There was a slightly old middle-aged man and a lady in a velvet coat standing next to her. Although they were well-dressed, they were low-key compared to the other nobles who were wearing jewelry. When he looked at her, Anya felt his gaze and looked back at him fervently. Dean took back his hand and whispered, "I met a childhood friend and promised to write a poem for her. I'll take this opportunity to show my incompetence on the spot. Please don't make fun of me." Carrie was slightly taken aback. "Compose a poem? Do you know how to write a poem?" Many of the nobles in the audience were also surprised, but soon reacted. One of them laughed. "It's our honor to hear the era medal winner write a poem. Mr. Dean is really versatile." "Young and promising," other nobles immediately said. Most of them were the nobles in the middle and back rows. The top nobles in the front rows were smiling, but didn't speak. Dean looked at Rudolph, who was in the crowd. Some modern poems that he had seen from the super chip emerged in his mind. He softly recited them. "If I love you, I will never be like the climbing trumpet flower. I will borrow your high branches to show off. If I love you, I will never be like the infatuated birds. I will repeat monotonous songs for the greenery. I will not be like the fountain. I will send cool comfort all year round. I will not be like the dangerous peak. I will increase your height. I will set off your majesty. I will even be like the sunlight, even the spring rain. No, these are not enough. I must be the K-pop next to you. I will stand with you as the image of a tree. The restless voice in the hall became quiet. Only the clear voice of the teenager echoed in the hall, revealing a sense of arrogance in the poetic words. Dean didn't continue to read the second half of the poem. This poem was called To the Oak. It was a love poem written by a female poet. The second half of the poem was more feminine, so he kept it. Everyone knew that the poem had come to an end when Dean's voice didn't ring for a long time. Many aristocrats were surprised. Although most of them didn't understand poetry, but aristocrats love drama, poetry, music, and other arts. In the eyes of aristocrats, etiquette, education, and works of art were often more valuable than wealth. Good poem. A fat middle-aged noble cheered on the spot. The other nobles recovered and burst into thunderous applause. Chapter 247. A trace of haze flashed in Rudolph's eyes as he heard the enthusiastic praises around him. He could feel the hidden meaning of the poem. Stand together as the image of a tree? Humph! There was still a faint and gentle smile on his face, but the corners of his mouth were slightly hooked, revealing a hint of a sneer. If Dean had achieved today's achievements and status in the past, he might have considered one or two. But now, he did not think that Dean would obediently be a good and obedient son-in-law. Dean softly read the poem and glanced at Rudolph. He continued to look at the other nobles. He put his hand on his chest and gave a gentleman's salute. This poem is called To the Oak. Good poem. Good poem. To the oak? It seems that oak has been extinct for a long time. The nobles gave warm applause and praise. In fact, from a poetic point of view, they were sincerely amazed, especially when they heard Dean say the name of the poem. They immediately knew that it wasn't a lyric poem written by Dean, but had an extraordinary meaning. Oak was an ancient tree that had long been extinct. It wasn't difficult to see from the name To the Oak that it was borrowed from the oak tree to pay tribute to love. Such an artistic expression couldn't be written by accident. It had its own meaning. Poet. This was a name that made the nobles feel deep veneration. Poets were divided into great poets and wandering poets. Ordinary folk poets were wandering poets. Even if they wrote amazing poems, they would still be classified as wandering poets. No noble would lower their status to listen to the poems of a common folk poet, except for some young noble ladies. But such a number were very few. Most of the beautiful stories were sung by bards. Compared with the traditional and erudite classical poets, bards had a lower threshold of entry. They were more like a combination of poetry and stories. The stories that were sung were mainly to cater to the needs of the common people. The nobles were dismissive of them. Thank you. Dean saluted. I'm sorry to disturb you. The banquet continues. He made an inviting gesture, and when the other nobles dispersed, he also took the opportunity to descend the stairs, behaving appropriately and courteously. Carrie looked at Dean and laughed. I was worried that you would show your cowardice. It seems that you are worthy of being a hunter. Moreover, your etiquette is impeccable. I really doubt that you grew up in a noble family. Oh, and your poem, I like it very much. Especially the sentence, increase your height, set off your majesty. It's so unique. Dean smiled, but didn't say anything. Carrie looked at the nobles and said to Dean, the nobles will come over to greet you. You have to deal with them. I've seen your performance just now, so I'm not worried that you will be rude. If the nobles want to cooperate with you, then you can decline. The temple will take care of everything for you. You just need to concentrate on your research. All right, Dean nodded. Soon, the nobles walked over one after another. The first to arrive was a tall and skinny middle-aged man who was closest to them. In his hand was a 13 or 14-year-old girl. She was slender and elegant, and the pouch in front of her chest was slightly bulging. Her snow-white skin looked like it had been washed by snow under the light, and it was extremely beautiful and alluring. Mr. Dean, Mr. Carey. The middle-aged man came in front of Dean and Carey. He politely said, I'm Cole from the Coat family. This is my youngest daughter, Kelly. Mr. Dean's poem was amazing. I've never heard of Mr. Dean writing poems before. You are really talented. Dean replied, You flatter me. Dudien's eyes swept over. He saw that Kelly's daughter was staring at him. She didn't hide the strong interest on her face. Dean politely nodded to her and retracted his eyes. Cole laughed. Don't be modest. I haven't seen anyone of the same age as you. It's not an exaggeration to say that you are a rare genius. Huh? Before he could finish his words, a burst of laughter came from behind. A slightly plump middle-aged man walked over with a lady of similar age. He smiled and said, "Kair, didn't you say the same thing last year?" Kair turned around and saw him. The smile on her face disappeared. "Are you slandering me in front of me?" The chubby middle-aged man shrugged his shoulders and turned to Dudien. "Mr. Dean, this is a gift from the Ham family." He handed out a delicate gift box. Dudien had long noticed the gift box. He didn't expect it to be a gift for him. "It's too expensive. I can't accept it. It's just a little thing. I hope Mr. Dean doesn't mind." The chubby middle-aged man laughed. "If you don't want it, then I'll be too embarrassed." Dudien was just being polite. He immediately said, "Thank you." He reached out and took the gift. "Mr. Dean, do you want to open it?" The chubby middle-aged man laughed. Dudien immediately opened the gift box. He saw a string of exquisite purple gems. Just by looking at the meticulous workmanship, he knew that it was very valuable. But his face didn't change. "This is a woman's necklace. I don't have a wife yet. How about this?" There was a trace of surprise in the chubby middle-aged man's heart as he saw Dudien's calm appearance. He couldn't help but think highly of Dudien. "I know that you don't have a wife. That's why I specially sent this purple star necklace. If you find a girl you like in the future, then give it to her as a gift. It's guaranteed to be useful." Then he blinked his eyes, revealing a "you understand" expression. Dudien couldn't help but smile. "Thank you." He wrote down the chubby middle-aged man's name and family. Then he accompanied him to exchange a few words. Cole, who was next to him, immediately took out the gift that he had prepared. It was a small gift box. There was a string of men's pocket watches inside. They were exquisitely made, and the hands were like silk. Dudien also accepted it. Behind these two, there were other nobles who sent gifts. The ordinary gifts were obviously symbolic and polite gifts. Dudien and the other party were well aware of this point. "This is the gift that she prepared for you." Rudolph came in front of Dudien and said with a smile. Dudien looked as usual as he politely said, "Thank you." Rudolph's eyes narrowed as he saw that Dudien's expression didn't fluctuate. He continued to exchange a few words and then turned away. Dudien put away the gift box. There wasn't the slightest trace of Jenny's aura on it. How could he not understand that this was a temporary test by the other party? This made the coldness in his heart thicker. Chapter 248. Gifts from nobles piled up like a mountain. The nobles chatted with each other after the gifts were sent. Such a grand banquet was a rare place to socialize. As time passed, suddenly someone trotted over and whispered in Carrie's ear as the banquet was halfway through. Carrie was stunned as he heard the other person's words. There was excitement and joy on his face as he whispered to Dudien, "Two masters of what element are coming. I'll go and greet them." Then he turned and trotted away. Dean was surprised. He had heard from Carrie that the temple wouldn't disturb the masters in order to avoid delaying the masters' research and destroying the divinity. If it was a normal epic medal winner, then they would naturally be invited to attend the banquet. But he didn't expect that a master would volunteer to attend a banquet. The door of the castle was pushed open under Carrie's lead. Two old men wearing robes came into the hall. They were followed by two middle-aged men and a middle-aged woman. The color and style of the robes were different from the two old men. Dudien recognized that they were the robes of senior architects. The nobles who were standing at the edge of the door and chatting saw the group of guests as they entered the hall. The nobles who were sitting on the sofa exclaimed in low voices when they saw the robes of the guests. The exclamations quickly spread to the ears of Rudolph, old Feline, and others. Everyone looked back and were surprised. Some of the nobles who were resting on the sofa couldn't help but stand up. Dudien saw the reaction of the nobles. He felt the charm and value of the masters of the Temple of Elements. He quickly went to greet them. He saw that they were smiling and had kind expressions. Their old eyes were full of wisdom. Their clothes were simple, and there was a lot of dust on their robes. It was obvious that they didn't pay much attention to their appearance. "Greetings, masters." Dean stepped forward and said. The tall and thin old man on the left laughed. "You are the maker of the new textile machine. You didn't join the Temple of Elements, but you won the Epic Medal. You were the second person to win the Epic Medal. But Ha was much older than you. He was in his 50s and won the Epic Medal with his self-created hog crossbow. He dominated the ancient war at that time." Dudian replied. "You are overpraising me." The short and fat old man on the right laughed. "We have just heard the news of the banquet. We took the liberty to disturb you. Please don't blame us." Dudian saw that the old man was so polite. "It's my honor that the two masters are willing to come to my banquet. I didn't expect the two masters to come. Please forgive us. Give us 2 chairs. Let's take a rest." The old man on the left laughed. Carrie, who was next to them, said, "Masters, please. I'll immediately ask someone to prepare tea for you." The old man on the right nodded and said to the 3 people behind him, "Talk to Mr. Dean. Although Mr. Dean is younger than you, but his knowledge may not be less than yours. Learn well." "Yes, teacher. Yes." The 2 middle-aged men and the middle-aged man immediately responded in a respectful manner. The nobles around them couldn't help but look at Dudian as they heard the words of the 2 old men. They didn't expect that the boy who had just joined the Temple of Elements would get such a high evaluation from the 2 masters. For a time, many nobles secretly regretted that the gifts they had sent were too low. Rudolph's eyes were gloomy. His fingers that were holding the glass slightly tightened. Dean chatted with his 3 students after the 2 masters left. "Hello, my name is Momo." The shorter middle-aged man in the middle revealed a bashful smile and said, "It's our first time meeting, so I didn't bring anything for you. When we go back to the temple, if you lack any materials, you can tell me. But don't buy anything that's too expensive." At this point, his face flushed. Dudian didn't expect the middle-aged man to be as shy as a teenager. He immediately said, "Thank you. I'll ask you for advice if I have any problems." "Great. I also want to discuss with you," Momo said in a happy tone. There was a trace of helplessness in the eyes of the other middle-aged man. He looked at Dudian. "Hello, my name is Kimba. I'm majoring in military engineering. I heard that you are a hunter. If you need any combat equipment in the future, I can sell you a few sets for free. I've improved my own crossbows and arrows." Dudian touched his nose. "I'll trouble you if I need it." "It's nothing." Kimba waved his hand. Asterisk, 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 asterisk looked at Dean as he waited for them to finish their introductions. "My name is Shima. Just like you, we are studying civil inventions. Your new textile machine has given me a lot of inspiration. Thank you very much." She bowed and saluted. The nobles around were shocked. They were interested in Dean's new textile machine because of the benefits it could bring. They didn't expect that a senior architect would pay respect to it because of its status in the world of divinity. Dean was also quite surprised, but then he was relieved. He had seen many scientists and researchers with his father since childhood. They were excited when they found the direction of the experiment. The significance of the new textile machine was that it was the beginning of a new era. Moreover, it was the beginning of the steam era. It was also the starting point for mankind to conquer the earth and step into the universe. The higher the status of the architect, the more they could see the extraordinary significance of the new textile machine. "You're too kind." Although surprised, Dudian's hands didn't slow down. He quickly lifted it up. Kimba saw Dudian's actions and nodded. "Let's talk on the side. There are too many people here." The 3 of them nodded and sat down on the sofa at the edge of the long table. Kimba was the more stable one among the 3. He tentatively told Dudian about some of the more basic wood-type inventions from civil engineering to military engineering. He found out that Dudian wasn't as ignorant as he thought. Dudian had his own unique views on many of the inventions, especially the expression that was revealed when he talked. He was full of confidence and convincing people. Chapter 249. I've been improving the corrosive acid mist recently. Based on the most advanced Poke's corrosive acid mist, I've added red pip leaf juice and flower crocodile snake venom. Theoretically speaking, The acid in the red pip leaf juice can neutralize the flower crocodile snake venom to achieve a strong corrosive effect. If I can complete it, my corrosive acid mist can even corrode metal. Dean saw his fanatical expression and thought of his previous shy appearance. He shook his head and said, "It is almost impossible to corrode the metal by relying on the venom of the organism. The basic types of the two substances are different. It would be easier to start from the metal itself." Start from the metal itself? Momo was puzzled. Dean said, "Under normal circumstances, metals will corrode and rust. But it takes time. However, it's not time that corrodes the metal itself. Dust, moisture, and other substances in the air will fall on the metal and erode it. This process is called oxidation." Oxidation? Momo, Kimba, and Shima were confused. They had never heard of this word before. Dean knew that it was difficult for them to understand. After all, the periodic table of elements hadn't been produced yet. No one knew about the existence of oxygen. He could only say, under normal circumstances, water will slowly disappear. The same is true for metals. Kimba thoughtfully said, "Water will disappear because it's absorbed by the temperature in the air. Do you mean that metals will also be absorbed by the temperature? Or will it be absorbed by the dust?" Dean saw him touch the edge. Water is in a liquid state, so it will disappear quickly. Metal is in a solid state, so it will disappear much slower. It will take a few years for a piece of metal to rust and rot. But after a few decades or hundreds of years, it will be like water. It will decay and become incomplete. After 1,000 years, there will be nothing left. Shima nodded as she pondered. Not bad. Now that you mention it, it is indeed so. So dust can actually corrode metal. That's amazing. Momo lowered his head and fell into deep thought. He mumbled to himself, "If that's the case, then dust can corrode metal. Dust is mud, and mud is rock. There must be something in the rock that can corrode metal faster." Dean didn't expect him to see through it. Sulfuric acid was the most common thing that corroded metals. Sulfuric acid was extracted from sulfur, pyrite, and other substances by dissolving and distilling. At present, the earth element hadn't produced sulfuric acid. If it was submitted, then it would be classified as a high-level item. "You observe everything very carefully." Kimba looked into Dean's eyes. Dean smiled. "Everything is created by the God of light. This is the enlightenment he gave us." Kimba grunted in agreement and said, "My teacher often tells us to learn to observe the world. The truth is hidden in every corner of the world and is standing right in front of us. It's just that we don't have a divine eye that can see through all illusions and see through the truth." At this point, he couldn't help but sigh. Dean nodded slightly as he felt the same way. Time flew by. The night grew darker and colder. The banquet came to an end amidst the brilliant lights, and the guests dispersed before dawn. Dean, as the host of the banquet, stood at the door and sent the guests back one by one. He waited for most of the nobles to leave before returning to the living room. The rest of the nobles were left to carry to send off. "We should go back." Kimba got up as he saw Dean return. Dean asked, "Don't you want to sit for a while?" "No, the teachers are tired." Kimba smiled at him. "Let's talk in detail next time when we have time. I believe that you will soon become a senior architect. When the time comes, I will talk to the teacher and let you live with us. We can discuss some divine arts every day." Dudian smiled. "All right." At this time, the two old men who were sitting and drinking tea also got up. They saw the expressions of their 3 students. The tall and thin old man on the left said, "We'll go back first. If you have any problems in the future, you can find my 2 students. They will help you." Dean nodded and thanked them. "I heard that you want to take the task of Ivissa. His research is too dangerous. He might blow himself up one day. You'd better concentrate on your own with magic," the chunky old man said in a serious tone. Dean nodded. "I know." The 2 old men looked at him but didn't say anything. They left the hall, surrounded by Kimba and the other 2. When the other nobles saw them, they all went up to greet them, but the 2 old men didn't even look at them. They didn't even bother to be polite and left the hall, which made some of the nobles who went up to strike up a conversation feel extremely awkward. "It's finally over." Carrie returned to the hall and smiled at Dudian. Master Hunt and Master Kreis have come to congratulate you. It is an unexpected surprise. Although you are only an intermediate architect, but in their hearts you are not inferior to a senior architect. Dean nodded. This was the influence of a master. He only needed to show up to improve his value. You worked hard today, Dean said to Carrie. I'll treat you to dinner another day. Carrie smiled and said, All right, I'll remember this meal. Dean smiled. Although Carrie's position was in personnel management, but his character was not only smooth but also forthright, which was admirable. At the moment the guests had left the hall, only some servants were cleaning up the garbage on the ground and the drinks on the table. Dean looked for old Foline and Sander who were sitting on the sofa. Old patriarch, I'll send you back. All right. Old Foline smiled. He knew that Dean had something to say to him. Dean said goodbye to Carrie and helped old Foline out of the hall. It was late at night, and the cold wind was like a knife. Dean looked at old Foline's thin coat. He took off his coat and put on old Foline's back. He helped old Foline to the carriage outside the manor. Sandro saw Dean's action. He wanted to say something, but didn't say anything. He silently followed behind Dean. Master, the butler and groom who were waiting in front of the carriage said respectfully, Go back. Old Foline ordered. Dean sent him to the carriage. Butler and Sander also entered the second carriage. They went back to the Rhine castle. It was late at night, and the castle was quiet. Dudien and others entered the castle and saw a girl sleeping in the living room. It was old Foline's granddaughter. Her name was Lena. She was 14 years old, a few years younger than Huton. She was sleeping soundly in the living room. She was covered with a thin quilt that was handed to her by a servant. Well, old Foline looked over. Aunt Lon, a middle-aged woman who was responsible for serving old Foline, whispered, Lena has been waiting for you to come back. I'll go and wake her up. Old Foline looked at the sleeping girl's face and sighed. Let her go back to her room to sleep. Then he turned around and went upstairs. Dean looked back at the girl lying on the sofa. If the information he got from Barton and others was correct, then this girl was the child of old Foline's fourth daughter. The fourth daughter was married to a grumpy, rich businessman. She died soon after giving birth to her daughter. Old Foline took his granddaughter back to his side to take care of her. But perhaps because of her mother, he didn't like her. Aunt Lon woke up Lena from a sofa. She opened her sleepy eyes and looked around. She saw Dean helping old Foline to go upstairs. She wanted to say something, but was stopped by Aunt Lon. She whispered, Miss, the master wants you to go back and rest. He is tired. Chapter 250. Dudien closed the door after he returned to old Foline's room. He waited for old Foline to sit down. The nobles should be aware of the potential threat that exists in our consortium. From today onwards, we won't be a small consortium that will decline at any time in their eyes, but a new force with great potential. It's not a good thing for us, but it's not a bad thing either. In any case, we have to beware of the other consortia. Old Foline nodded. I know. They won't mind stepping on us if we have a problem. Now we can only rely on you. If you can become a master of the Temple of Elements, then our consortium will have a solid backing. At least we can draw in 1 or 2 allies. In that case, the future pattern will be fixed. We won't be suppressed as long as there aren't any major incidents. Dudien's eyes lit up. I believe that we will encounter trouble soon, but it doesn't matter. You have to stabilize first. I'll fight back when the time comes. Old Foline was startled. He thought for a moment and nodded. I will. It's getting late. You should rest early. Dudien got up and closed the window. He isolated the cold wind outside. I have something to do. I'll go back first. After saying that, he turned around and left the room. When he arrived at the dimly lit corridor, he turned around and glanced at another room. His eyes flickered slightly, and he slowly retracted his gaze. He turned around and left, riding a carriage back to his castle. 2 days passed in the blink of an eye. After the banquet in St. Petersburg, the business district was as peaceful as usual, but the undercurrents between the consortiums were surging. Only the executives of the consortiums in the center of the whirlpool knew what happened. At the same time, in another art industry, there was also a small wave. To the oak, if I love you, the beautiful poem was sung by the poets. In the castles of the nobles who had more social connections, the servants could often hear their young masters or young ladies reciting this poem. Even in the ordinary residential areas of the small towns, there were some handsome and brave boys who were courageously reciting this poem to confess to the girl they loved. In addition to the catchy and beautiful poem, the structure and content of the poem were also analyzed by some well-known poets. Many of them searched through various ancient books, but could not find what Ling Shao flower symbolized. Even the two words spring rain were extremely unfamiliar to them. They had only heard of calamity rain. For a time, there were even some poets who commented that the poem was made up and completely ignorant. However, on the second day after the poem spread, the classical poet Grand Master Taiza gave an evaluation and analysis of this poem. The firmament flower in the poem was a type of flower from the ancient era that had long gone extinct, while the spring rain in the poem referred to a wet season in the ancient era. These were only recorded in extremely isolated and cold historical knowledge. After Grandmaster Taiza's analysis, everyone came to a sudden realization. They didn't think that these two unfamiliar terms would have such a deep origin. They also gasped in admiration at the creator of this poem. Just this kind of knowledge alone was far better than most poets. Erudite meant connotation and artistry in the hearts of many people. There were still some doubts and evaluations about the structure of the poem after the analysis and evaluation of Master Taiza. But the statements were vague and objective. They didn't dare to attach negative comments. They didn't want to get into an embarrassing situation if it was proven that the poem had an origin. Dudian didn't expect that the poem would spread his reputation in the circle of poets and aristocrats. Mount Erdos, Borong family, majestic castle, even the spring rain, even the sunlight. Jenny sat at the desk in front of the window, reading a poem on a roll of paper in her hand. Her pearl-like eyes gradually became moist, and tears fell from her eyes, slid down her cheeks that were as soft as the moonlight, and soaked into the paper. The warm sunlight shone through the window, and tiny dust particles floated in the air. The carrier pigeon standing on the windowsill was combing its soft feathers with its sharp beak, and the roll tied to its leg was engraved with the words Melissa. Half a month passed in the blink of an eye. Mission of the temple. Improved snake crossbow. Dudian received his mission from the Temple of Elements. The snake crossbow was created by the architect Taya. It was created in the 263rd year of the giant wall calendar. It has been 45 years since then. The snake crossbow is known for its flexibility and versatility. It can control the wind speed and make it difficult for the enemy to figure out the trajectory. Dudian carefully read the records of the mission. He gradually understood what kind of crossbow it was. In general, the structure was relatively new and not complicated. But according to his idea, there was no need to improve it. The flexibility of the snake crossbow also determined its strength. Although it seemed to be advanced and easy to use, but in fact it didn't have much of an advantage compared to the ordinary crossbow. In short, the initial positioning was wrong. Archery was about killing in one shot. It had to be fast, accurate, and ruthless. If the speed and strength of the arrow increased, even if the enemy could see it, they wouldn't be able to avoid it. The snake crossbow was obviously a common phenomenon among mages. After all, mages sat in the Temple of Elements to do research. They didn't personally experience combat, so they didn't have a deep understanding of some weapons. As a result, there would be some things that seemed to be useful, but the effect was not great. I have to make a big change. Dean pondered for a moment and made up his mind. This was his first mission, so he wasn't only paying attention to his immediate superiors. People from other factions in the Temple of Elements would also pay attention to him. Some consortiums that had ideas about him would also pay close attention to him. So he had to do his best. He put away the drawings and looked at the snake crossbow. He didn't modify it, but went directly to his room. He cut the wooden planks and prepared to make another crossbow. Half a day passed in the blink of an eye. Dudian came out of his room in the afternoon. He carried 2 crossbows on his shoulders and went to the mission hall. Chapter 251. I'm here to submit the task. Dean looked at him. You too? Bernard was stunned. Submit the task? Didn't you release the task today? You finished it in half a day? Dean replied. I've improved the snake crossbow, but I don't know if it can meet the requirements of the task. Improved snake crossbow? Bernard was stunned as he saw the two bows on Dudien's back. It's your first time to receive such a tricky task? He saw Dudien's puzzled expression and continued. You don't know about this task. It can be said that this task is one of the most troublesome tasks. The difficulty of the task itself isn't high, but the one who reviewed the task is the student of the creator of the snake crossbow. If the changes are not good or the changes are not big, then you will be criticized and even your points will be deducted. Dean was startled. He frowned but didn't say a word. Did you improve it? The shape seems to be very different from the snake crossbow. Bernard looked at the two bows and smiled. It's going to be very difficult to pass the test. You should go back and recreate it. Dean's eyes lit up for a moment, but shook his head. No, I'll use this. I've improved it to serve the public and not to serve the examiner. Then he thanked Bernard and walked towards the task temple. I'll go with you, Bernard said as he caught up with Dean. There were more than a dozen figures standing in the hall. Some of them were accepting tasks. Some of them were choosing tasks posted by others. Some were collaborating with others. And some were exchanging materials for the task. These materials needed to be purchased with points. If the task failed, not only the points would be deducted, but the points used to purchase the materials would also be lost. Therefore, it was extremely difficult to maintain one's rank in the Temple of Elements. It was like a boat going against the current. If one didn't move forward, they would be pushed back. Only by continuous progress could they stand firm. They had to submit a significant contribution to obtain a special medal or become a master. Only then would they be able to maintain their rank forever. I've come to submit the task. Dean came to one of the counters. At this moment, the counter was empty without a single person. On the contrary, there were 7 or 8 people queuing up in front of the task window. All of them looked at Dean in astonishment. A chubby middle-aged man was listlessly lying behind the counter. He was stunned when he heard Dudien's words. He looked up at him and said, Submit the task? Dudien nodded to confirm. The stout middle-aged man blinked his eyes. Someone had come to submit a mission on the day of the mission announcement. He had only encountered such a situation 3 times in total. After a slight daze, he sat up and said, Show me the mission notice and the mission item. Dean handed over the notice card and the 2 bows. The stout middle-aged man took a glance at it and said, All right, the task of improving the snake crossbow, right? I will inform you. The review will take 1 to 3 days. You can go back and wait. Dean nodded. Bernard saw that Dudien had submitted the strange crossbow. He wanted to say something, but hesitated. He sighed and said, I hope you pass. Dean didn't express his opinion. After leaving the temple, Dean went to some chambers of commerce in the commercial district. He selected some metal materials to make his second item. Lightning rod. Time flew. 2 days passed in the blink of an eye. On this day, Dean was fiddling with a lightning rod in his god's room. This room was a wood element god's room. There was no iron furnace, so the efficiency of making lightning rods was extremely slow. Moreover, he needed to go back to the castle to smelt and manufacture the lightning rod. However, the tools in the wood element god's room allowed him to make the mold quickly. Knock. There was a knock on the door. Dean immediately stopped his work and went forward to open the door. He used his body to block the door and looked out. He saw a teenager wearing an apprentice knight of light's armor. Dean's eyes fell on the letter in the teenager's hand. Is it a reply to the task? The teenager looked nervous as he saw Dudien. Yes. Dean took the letter and said, Thank you. After he finished speaking, he closed the door and opened the envelope. He shook out the letter and scanned it. Immediately, he saw a line of small words. The wording was relatively polite, but the meaning was very clear, unqualified. Dean's eyebrows raised as anger surged out of his heart. He had considered this point when he heard Bernard's words. He was worried, but he still hoped that the other side was more rational and could understand the value of the military crossbow. Although the military crossbow wasn't a masterpiece, but it was a great improvement. However, the other side obviously didn't see the value of the military crossbow. Otherwise, he wouldn't have given such an audit result. Dean's eyes were gloomy as he turned and opened the door. He quickly went downstairs and went straight towards the direction of the temple. The teenager hadn't gone far when he heard footsteps. He looked back and saw Dean angrily walking towards him. He was stunned for a moment, but soon found out that Dean's anger wasn't directed at him. He was relieved. Dean went straight past the youth and strode into the mission hall. He looked around and found the counter. He saw the stout, middle-aged man who was reading a book. He suppressed the anger in his heart and said, "I want to see the examiner who reviewed my tasks. I don't agree with the results of his review." The stout, middle-aged man was surprised. He immediately recognized Dean as the person from 2 days ago. He frowned. "It's the senior architect who reviewed the task. You should find your own problems first." A cold light flashed in Dean's eyes as he exuded a murderous aura. The temple has rules. If you're not satisfied with the results of the review, you can debate in the temple. I have the right to see him. The stout, middle-aged man's face slightly changed as he saw Dean's cold eyes. "I'll inform you. Go back and wait." Dean coldly looked at him, but didn't say anything. He turned and left. After Dean left, the chunky middle-aged man felt a little cold sweat on his back. There was a feeling of relief. His face changed. He hesitated for a moment, but still pulled out a stack of paper from the drawer and quickly wrote something. A building in the 9th castle of the Temple of Elements. A mature figure was sitting in front of a desk on the 3rd floor. She was sorting out her information. Senior architects were different from intermediate architects. Each of them had a separate building in the castle as a god's tool room. The environment was more quiet, and they wouldn't be disturbed by the noise caused by experiments next door. Chapter 252. The news spread like a bird with wings to the ears of the consortiums and the temple. An intermediate architect wouldn't attract so much attention. The success or failure of a senior architect wasn't a big deal. But the halo given by the epic medal was too dazzling. Dean had become the most eye-catching figure in the temple. There was no one else who was below master level. The newcomer with the epic medal wants to defend himself in the temple. I heard that his first mission was the improved serpent crossbow. He completed it in just half a day. His speed was fast enough, but he didn't pass. At least he saw what a true divine art is. It's not something that can be created with a little bit of brains and luck. You can't blame him. After all, he was the son of a tailor. He was able to make a new textile machine because of his father's influence. He has joined the temple for about a month. It would be strange if he could improve a 3-star item like the snake crossbow. It's good that he can understand the structure of the snake crossbow. It's a military item, although it's an attribute, but it's not easy to cross the boundary. Moreover, the reviewer of the snake crossbow is Tiffany. She is a famous cold-faced snow woman. She is extremely respectful towards her teacher's items. Even we don't dare to touch her things. If the improvement isn't good, then she will come to our door. That's right. This newcomer is quite unlucky to have encountered a rebuff. Don't say that. If it wasn't Tiffany, then he would have been lenient because of the epic medal. But it wouldn't be a good thing for the newcomer. Now that he has hit a wall with Tiffany, the newcomer's arrogance will be suppressed. Humbly learning can make people progress, right? Haha, if you don't like the epic medal being awarded to a tailor's son, then just say it. Some senior architects were talking about the newcomer who won the epic medal. After all, the epic medal was one of the most important medals in the Temple of Elements. It was on the same level as the Lifetime Achievement Award of the Master of Divinity. The number of times the epic medal was awarded was the least. Every epic medal represented the birth of a divine art item that could change an era. Mount Erdo's Boron family. Plead in the temple? Rudolph glanced at the letter handed by the butler. There was a sneer on his face. The higher you are, the heavier you fall. You want to improve a 3-star item in just one day? You overestimate yourself. You don't know how to make up for your failure. You should take advantage of the remaining time to complete the task. You should go to the temple to plead your case. The corner of his mouth revealed a touch of sneer. He could barely understand that Dean was able to manufacture a new type of textile machine. After all, his father was a tailor and often came into contact with textile machines. However, the snake crossbow belonged to the military crossbow. Although he knew that Dean was a hunter, knowing how to use it did not mean that he could manufacture it, even if he knew how to use it. Mel family. There was an afternoon tea table in the garden. A middle-aged man was leaning on the back of a chair. He was sitting lazily. His belly was round and full due to long-term business activities. He looked like a farmer. His thick eyebrows and black eyes were full of majesty. He had aristocratic etiquette and cultivation. He was the current head of the Mel family, Mark. He was a man who had been regarded as a tiger by various consortia. He had created business miracles when he was young. The weak Mel family had risen in his hands. He was still the object of worship for many wealthy businessmen. There was a 16 or 17-year-old girl sitting in front of him. She was slender and had beautiful cheeks. There was a smile on her face. This kind of beauty was unforgettable. She was Mark's only daughter, Melissa. The current Melissa was no longer young and inexperienced. Her eyes had the liveliness and elegance of a young girl, as well as the calmness and wisdom that many adult nobles did not have. She gently tasted the strong tea in her hand, the broken sun casting its shadow on the table and her body, leaving mottled light on the teapot. "Father, I know Jenny's temperament. She is stubborn and likes to get stuck in a dead end. No one can persuade her to do something she has decided on. As long as I secretly send her the news of that person, she will definitely not forget that person. In this way, she will definitely not agree to marry her father into another family." Melissa's mouth curved into a smile. Her mother died early. Patriarch Rudolph gave birth to her only daughter. He doesn't want to have a misunderstanding with his only daughter. Last time there was a conflict because of that kid, and the relationship between father and daughter was broken. Now he will cherish her even more. Mark listened to his daughter's words. The smile on his face didn't change, so his daughter has the same temperament as him. Melissa sighed. "In fact, Jenny is a very good playmate. She is different from those people outside. You can leave this matter to me if you don't have the heart." Mark smiled. Melissa looked at him and slightly shook her head. At this time, footsteps were heard from the side. The butler quickly came over and handed a letter. "Master, it's from the Temple of Elements." Mark glanced at the cover of the letter. He knew where it came from. He took the letter and waved his hand. After the butler left, he opened the letter and glanced at it. He chuckled. This little guy can't calm down even after his mission failed. At his age, he doesn't have enough determination to bear the great glory of the epic medal. He has to pay the price for getting something that doesn't belong to him. Melissa, who was sitting across the table, asked, "Is it from the little poet?" "Well, his poems are good," Mark joked. "At least his level is higher than his invention." With that, he handed the letter over. He did not forbid his daughter from getting involved in such important matters of the family. On the contrary, he would take the initiative to let Melissa handle some of the small matters since she was young, training her adaptability in this aspect from a young age. Melissa took a quick glance at it and shook her head. "I didn't expect the person who wrote such a beautiful poem to be so impetuous. His poem is also filled with unyielding pride. He's a person who can't take humiliation." Chapter 253. Ryan Castle. The study room on the second floor. Old Feline held the letter in his hand. He didn't speak for a long time. Sander, who was standing at the table, saw his father's expression. He couldn't help but ask, "Father, isn't he in the temple? What happened?" Old Feline was silent for a moment. He handed the letter to him. Sandro couldn't wait to flip through it. Very soon, he was done. His expression changed, and he said hurriedly, "He wants to defend himself in a shrine? Senior architects are senior architects. How can he win against them in the debate? He has joined the temple for less than a month." This, Old Feline's eyes lit up. Sandro said, "Can we contact him and ask him to withdraw his defense? This is his first mission after joining the temple, so he will definitely be watched by all parties. Ever since he won the epic medal last time, Many nobles and wealthy businessmen have come to join our consortium. Although they were all rejected, they still maintain business relations. If something happens to him, the fame and reputation we have just built up will be completely destroyed. Old Feline was silent for a moment. Do you think he is a person who can't control his emotions? Sander was startled. He remembered that Dean always had a calm smile on his face. From the first day he stepped into the Rhine castle, Dean gave him an unfathomable feeling. The anxiety in his heart calmed down. Father, do you mean that he has his own plans? Is he sure that he will win his defense? But he has just joined the temple. He hasn't had the opportunity to come into contact with these things. Even if he is smart, he will be in a weak position when it comes to hard knowledge. I'm worried that he will lose his face after winning the epic medal, so he will be impulsive. A person who escaped from Thornflower Prison will never be an impulsive person. At least the vanity of face won't be able to arouse his impulsive emotions. Old Feline slowly said, although I don't know the purpose of his actions, but he certainly has his own plans. This boy is the most terrible and scheming person I have ever seen. If we give him a few more years, then the old foxes of other consortiums may not be his opponent. Sander was startled as he saw his father's confident expression. Send someone to send a message to him. If there is anything he needs, we will prepare it for him. Old Feline said. Sandro hesitated for a moment before replying, Got it. The other consortiums also received the news. But compared to the disappointment of Dean's failure, they were even more disappointed when they saw Dean's impulsive defense. Knowledge could be made up through learning, but the mentality needed to grow and accumulate. Even if Dean failed the first month's mission, they could understand. After all, the project was broad and profound. It would be good if he could figure out the threshold in a month. Not to mention directly receiving the mission and completing it was already in the category of a genius. In the Temple of Elements of Church Mountain, Dean returned to his room and continued to work on the production of the lightning rod. 2 days passed in the blink of an eye. Dean's lightning rod had come to an end. Only some assembly parts were left. He needed to bring the materials back to his castle and wait for the molten iron to be poured into the mold to condense. Then it would be officially completed. Dong dong. There was a knock on the door. Dean smelled the scent of the previous apprentice knight. He went forward and opened the door. He saw the apprentice knight standing in the doorway with a cautious look. There was a card and a letter in his hand. The apprentice knight was shocked when he saw the door suddenly open. He quickly handed over the things in his hand and said, This is for you. Dean nodded slightly and took the 2 things. The card was the pass to enter the temple. The letter should be a response to his content. Dean's face was cold as he opened the letter and glanced at the time. Tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock. He crumpled the letter and threw it into the trash can. Dean put away the card and turned around to pack up the various materials he had made. He called a carriage outside the castle and returned to his castle. The carriage was waiting for them to use at any time. Moreover, it was free of charge. It was a small benefit of the identity of an architect. Black Death season, April 22nd. It was 6:30 in the morning. Dean took the carriage and drove all the way to the temple. The temple was built in the middle of the mountains behind the church mountain. It was in the middle of the 10th castle and the 11th castle. It was like a solemn, classical cathedral. It covered an area of thousands of square meters. It was extremely spacious and huge. There were 2 8-meter-high statues at the entrance. They were holding books in their hands. They were the statues of 2 outstanding masters in the history of the Temple of Elements. Both of them had won the Master Lifetime Achievement Award. They had contributed many works of invention to nourish the civilians and improve the living environment of the people. Dean got off the carriage and saw more than 10 carriages parked outside the temple. Some of them had noble family flags on them. It seemed that the nobles had spent a lot of money to come here to watch the event. Dean squinted his eyes as he dusted off his body and calmly walked into the temple. Look, that is the creator of the new textile machine, Dean. It's him. Dean was seen by some architects as he came out of the temple. They immediately called him out to attract more people's attention. Dean was a little surprised. There was no camera in this era. After all, The plastic film material was manufactured in the last few years. There were only words and no pictures in the newspapers. Unless it was a big news that had to be accompanied with pictures, then they would ask a painter to sketch out the appearance. He didn't expect that so many people would know him. It was obvious that he had attracted a lot of attention and the charm of the era metal. Dean didn't stop as he saw that people were gathering around him. He quickly walked into the temple. The temple was extremely spacious. There was an empty space in front and rows of neatly arranged seats in the back. At the moment, half of the seats in the temple were occupied. There were about 200 or 300 people. Dean estimated that most of the people sitting in the last row wouldn't be able to hear the voices in the front. Chapter 254. Two figures with unique temperament appeared side by side at the entrance of the temple. Tiffany, is this the little guy who wants to appeal? The handsome middle-aged man in a black suit looked at Dudian, who was sitting on the other side of the platform. He said with interest, "I didn't expect that the new textile machine would be made by such a teenager. What a pity, what a pity." Tiffany looked at him and indifferently said, "He has the ability to make a new textile machine, but the wood element is broad and profound. There are endless things to learn. He wantonly desecrated my teacher's things. He is arrogant and arrogant. He may not be able to go far in the future." She slowly walked down the stairs step by step. She was nearly 8 meters tall, and her bright silver robe was draped over her shoulders. She attracted the attention of the surrounding people. Dean heard the exclamation of the crowd behind him. He looked sideways and saw two figures with extraordinary temperament walking along the steps. His eyesight was very good, so he could see the names on the medals on their chests. His eyes slightly narrowed and then returned to normal. He looked straight ahead, motionless like a pine tree. Under the eyes of the crowd, Tiffany and the handsome middle-aged man came to the front of the platform. The handsome middle-aged man stopped and sat down in the front row. Tiffany quietly looked at Dudian. She saw that the teenager wasn't looking at her. She frowned, but didn't say anything. She turned around and sat down in front of her desk. She looked at the snake crossbow made by her teacher Tia. She gently stroked it and looked up at the teenager in front of her. This time they were face to face. Her eyes were indifferent and full of powerful momentum. There was a sense of looking down on him. The teenager who was sitting opposite her looked indifferent. He didn't care about her at all. His eyes were dark like a deep pool. It was difficult to see through his heart. Tiffany slightly frowned. She coldly snorted in her heart and retracted her eyes. After a moment, the voices in the temple were getting louder and louder. The entire temple was almost full. Such a big momentum was usually seen only when senior architects and masters argued in the temple. On the seats above the defense platform, 3 figures slowly walked over. The one in the lead was over 50 years old, with white hair and a master medal. The 2 behind him were 2 senior oracles. "It's Master Kelt. Gee, I didn't expect that there would be a master in the temple. The little guy who won the era medal is really enviable. It'll be great if we can come up with such a thing when we're out of our minds." The audience at the back was in a heated discussion. Silence. At this time, Master Kelt and the other 2 took their seats. A tall, skinny middle-aged man sitting on the right raised a hammer on the table and slammed it down. With a loud shout, the discussion in the room gradually subsided. "Mr. Dean, the initiator of this defense, is improved snake crossbow. Now, let's begin the debate in the Divine Hall. Mr. Dew, please speak." Kelt's eyes fell on Dean. He looked at the little guy who won the epic medal. Dean nodded slightly and stood up. He grabbed the military crossbow and looked at Tiffany. "My task is to improve the snake crossbow. The snake crossbow is one of the works of Master Tiffany. The task is to improve the snake crossbow. The literal meaning can be easily understood. Transform, improve. So, I only need to meet these 2 points to complete the task. I think I have completed these 2 points. But Miss Tiffany didn't approve it. Please give me an explanation." Everyone in the audience was surprised. Give an explanation? Was this the rhythm of a checkmate? Tiffany raised her eyebrows. She slowly got up and said in a cold voice, "Not qualified. That's my explanation. Although the crossbow you made has been modified, this kind of modification is inferior to the original, and anyone can do it. The task is to make the modified crossbow more effective than the snake crossbow. Do you think the thing in your hand meets this requirement? At this point, his tone was extremely impolite. Everyone looked at Dean. Their eyes fell on the crossbow in Dean's hand. They were curious and wanted to listen to his explanation. Dean calmly looked at Tiffany. He didn't show the military crossbow in his hand, but asked, "Of course it's satisfied. Otherwise, why would I submit it?" Tiffany was slightly stifled. "I know that you have produced a new textile machine. You have just won the epic medal. But you should be modest. Arrogance will make people fall." Dean sneered, "Today we won't talk about the new textile machine. There is nothing to talk about with people who don't understand. I want to ask you, have you tried my military crossbow? If so, can you point out the defects?" Tiffany's complexion slightly changed. When she first saw the strange crossbow, she didn't have the mind to carefully examine it. It was completely different from the snake crossbow made by her teacher, especially when she heard that the other person had only spent half a day to make it. She was too lazy to look at it. A newcomer who had joined the Temple of Elements for more than half a month? What could he make in half a day? Dean saw that she didn't speak. He sneered, "In my opinion, you didn't carefully review my work. You directly denied it. Is it because the shape is different from your teacher's crossbow? Or do you think that I am doomed to fail because I am a newcomer? Arrogance and prejudice will make people look stupid. I wasn't a newcomer in the Temple of Elements, but I was able to make a new textile machine. The world is very big. Nothing is impossible. Today I came to defend myself. I want to tell you that my work is more than qualified. It is my child. I won't allow anyone to underestimate it. I won't allow anyone to despise it. I won't allow anyone to underestimate it. I won't allow anyone to despise it. Today, under everyone's watchful eyes, I will give it a proper name." At this point, there was a hint of killing intent in his voice, and a hint of hatred flashed in his eyes. Tiffany was so angry that she laughed. "Arrogant? You are the one who is arrogant." Dean indifferently looked at her. He raised the military crossbow in his hand and looked around the audience. The teenager's clear and loud voice spread through the audience. "This is my work. It's called the military crossbow. I admit that my crossbow has little to do with the snake crossbow. It is not an improvement on the snake crossbow. It is a new creation. Moreover, I can say very directly that the reason why I didn't choose to improve the snake crossbow is because the snake crossbow is too backward. It should have been eliminated long ago. There is no need to improve it. Its starting point is wrong. Spending time and energy to improve it will only waste the time, energy, and resources of future generations." Chapter 255. Shut up. Tiffany slapped the table in anger. "Don't think that just because you got the epic medal you can do whatever you want. How long have you joined the Temple of Elements? How many things have you seen? How dare you talk nonsense about the work of a master? My teacher's snake crossbow has been evaluated by many masters of the temple and is listed as a 3-star item. How dare you say that it will be eliminated? Yes, the snake crossbow is the work of a master. How can it be eliminated? This newcomer is too arrogant. He thinks that because he accidentally produced a new type of textile machine, he can do everything. He is too arrogant. You can't blame him for bearing so much vanity at this age. It is inevitable that he will get arrogant." The audience was discussing in low voices. Dean looked around the audience. His face was as cold as frost. "First of all, I don't deny the contribution and authority of the master. But since the snake crossbow was only rated as a 3-star item and not a 5-star item, it means that there is still room for improvement. As a military invention, there has always been a first place. There is no second place, because the second-place person will die on the battlefield." His voice was cold as he looked at the audience. "I dare not say that my military crossbow is better than the snake crossbow, but it is by no means inferior to the snake crossbow." Tiffany was so angry that she laughed. "Do you mean that your crossbow, which took you half a day to make, is equal to my teacher's snake crossbow? Can it reach the standard of a 3-star item?" Dean looked at her indifferently. What you can understand is what I want to express. Tiffany laughed. Ignorance is pitiful, sad, and hateful. I think so too. Dean indifferently said, but I won't hate. You will regret it. Tiffany put away the anger on her face and looked at Dean. Originally, I respected you for the great contribution of the new textile machine. But you must pay the price for your arrogance. Since you think that your crossbow is not inferior to my teacher's snake crossbow, then please show it to us. Dean indifferently said, the crossbow is a killing weapon, not a performance prop. My things don't need to be displayed. Since you believe in the authority of the master, everyone here believes in it, and I also believe in it, then this matter should be handed over to the master. Speaking up to this point, he said to Kelt on the stage, Master, please verify it. This is my design blueprint. After saying that, he took out a blueprint that he had prepared beforehand. Kelt didn't look at the drawings, but looked at the teenager. From the previous tough attitude towards Tiffany to the confident declaration of the audience and stubbornly resisting the public's opinion, his attitude was neither servile nor overbearing. Everything seemed calm and mature. He didn't say anything extreme because of the dispute with the other side. He also didn't get irritated by the one-sided negative comments of the audience. Kelt was quite surprised from the point of view of a bystander. Such a calm way of dealing with things was difficult even for a mature person. Let me take a look first, Kelt said softly. Dean handed over the crossbow and the blueprints. Everyone in the divine hall whispered to each other. Tiffany turned to look at Kelt and waited for his result. Dean stood under Kelt's high table. There was no trace of anxiety on his face. Time ticked by. Half an hour later, Kelt slowly raised his head and moved the magnifying glass from the blueprint. He looked hesitant and complex. He looked at Dean and Tiffany, who was quietly waiting for him. After thinking for a while, he said, According to my preliminary view, the military crossbow is more innovative. It is suitable for short-range combat. Its lethality and rate of fire are relatively high. In my personal opinion, there is no problem for it to be listed as a 3-star item. The entire divine hall was silent. Everyone was surprised as they looked at Kelt. They suspected that there was a problem with their ears. Tiffany was stunned for a moment. She quickly reacted and said, Master, did you say that this thing has reached the level of a 3-star item? How is it possible? He only used it for half a day, this. Kelt saw the paleness of her face and sighed in his heart. He slowly said, My evaluation is biased and only represents my personal opinion. The specific value needs to be evaluated by the Elemental Association. But one thing is certain. If it is only used as a mission item to improve the snake crossbow, this military crossbow is completely qualified and can pass. Tiffany's face turned ugly. These words were tantamount to giving her a slap in the face. Dean looked calm. He wasn't surprised. The people in the audience looked at each other. When they heard that Kelt thought that this thing could reach the level of a 3-star item, they knew that such an item was fully qualified to complete the task. But they didn't expect that Dean, a newcomer who had joined for half a month, could complete such an item in just half a day. It was extremely rare for a master like Kelt to give such an evaluation. No, isn't this newcomer too exaggerated? Is there really such a thing as talent? Master Kelt won't lie. Otherwise, the Element Association would slap his face. Even if this thing isn't a 3-star item, it is definitely a 2-star item. How many years would it take for an intermediate architect to be able to make a second 2-star item? This kid is so arrogant. He really has the capital to be arrogant. I don't know what the Element Association's evaluation of this thing is. The people in the audience were discussing. The outcome of the appeal has been decided. Mr. Dean won. The meeting is adjourned. Kelt looked at Tiffany, slightly shook his head, and turned to leave. Dean saw that Kelt took away the blueprint and crossbow. He knew that Kelt was helping him to hand over the crossbow to the Element Association for evaluation. After the defense in the temple, the reputation of the crossbow would spread much faster than normal. In this case, the speed at which you would get benefits would increase by several times. Impossible, impossible, Tiffany whispered to herself. Her face was pale and bloodless. Dean glanced at her and came in front of her. He was already 175 meters tall, but in front of this woman he was still half a head shorter. He needed to look up to see her. Tiffany recovered as she saw Dean. She put away the mist in her eyes and gritted her teeth. "What do you want to say? Do you want to laugh at me?" "Laugh at me?" Dean smiled. "That's what children do. I just want to tell you that the best way to pay respect to a master is not to humbly bow your head, but to surpass him." Then he turned and left along the stairs. Chapter 256. "Mr. Dean, I've come to pick you up." Sandro appeared from the side as Dean came to the door of the temple. There was excitement in his eyes. He didn't expect that Dean would resolve such a big crisis so easily. Moreover, he would become famous again. Dean looked at him. "Where's the old patriarch?" "Father is resting at home. He's not in good health," Sandro replied. "The old patriarch has prepared a celebration feast for you. He's waiting for you to come back." Although his age was more than enough to be Dudian's father, but at the moment he was very polite in front of Dudian. There was even some respect. This scene surprised people, but considering Dudian's current identity and the situation of the Ryan family, they were relieved. Dean frowned as he felt the attention of the people around him. He looked at Sandro. "Let's go back first." "All right." Sandro was relieved. He led the way and opened the door for Dean. Dean got on the carriage and whispered to Sandro, "You come up too." There was a trace of joy in Sandro's eyes. He quickly agreed and got on the carriage. He saw that Dudian had sat down and ordered the coachman to return to the Ryan castle. The carriage went along the hillside. The ground was a bit uneven as it bumped and shook. Dean sat on the chair. He looked at Sandro, who was sitting opposite to him. "Did the old patriarch instruct you to come here?" Sandro didn't expect him to ask about this. He was startled for a moment, and his expression changed slightly. He hesitated for a moment, but still said honestly, "I came here on my own to help you." Dean indifferently said, "You should learn from your father. Although he is old, but his vision is never wrong." Sandro was embarrassed. He understood the meaning of Dean's words. "I will. Also, pay attention to your attitude towards me when you are outside." Dean calmly said, "My identity has risen from a hunter to an architect with potential. You are the future successor of the Ryan family. You should show your attitude. Don't expose our deep relationship. The more the enemy knows about us, the smaller your power to fight back will be." Sandro's face was hot. He couldn't refute Dean's last sentence. "I know. I will in the future." Dean looked at him, but didn't continue to talk. He opened the curtains and looked at the scenery outside. Dean saw old Foulene standing at the entrance of the Ryan castle. Old Foulene was waiting for him. Old Foulene's shoulders were covered with warm velvet. He stood at the entrance with crutches. He looked at old Foulene and sighed in his heart. He pushed the door and got off the carriage. "It's windy outside. You don't have to wait for me at the entrance." "It's okay. I just came out." Old Foulene smiled. Dean was speechless. Aunt Lon looked at Dean as she heard old Foulene's words. "Mr. Dean, you are finally back. Master has been waiting at the entrance for a long time." He didn't listen to anyone. His body. Old Foulene slightly waved his hand to interrupt her words. He smiled at Dean. "I know that you won't do things that you are not sure of." Dean helped him to sit on the chair. "It's good that you know." Old Foulene noticed Sandro, who was behind Dean. He sighed and looked at Dean. "Let's eat first. It's getting late, and everyone is hungry." "Third brother, tell us about the shrine." Sandro bowed. "Yes." Under old Foulene's command, all the servants moved to bring the dishes to the table. Dean helped old Foulene to move to the table. Sandro, Jake, Hugh, Lena, and other juniors took their seats. Sandro told the story of the shrine to the crowd. The crowd applauded when they heard that Dean had won. The butler suddenly came to old Foulene's side and whispered, "Master, the people from the Sterling Consortium have come." Old Foulene was surprised. He looked at Dean and said to the butler, "Bring them in." The butler nodded. After a moment, a young woman dressed in bright jewelry came into the hall. She saw old Foulene and Dean. She smiled and came over. "Old patriarch, you are still so healthy." Old Foulene looked at her and smiled. "Are you a child of Chai's family?" A trace of surprise flashed in the young woman's eyes. She immediately smiled and said, "Old patriarch, your memory is very good. My father is Chasto. I'm his fourth daughter. You can call me Rosie. I came in a hurry and disturbed your meal. This is a small gift as an apology." After saying that, she handed over a delicate small box and opened it. There was a fine platinum necklace inside. Several women who were sitting in the middle of the table stretched their necks to see the necklace in the box. Their eyes lit up with excitement. Old Feline faintly smiled. "You are a junior, so I won't blame you." Rosie stared at him as she saw that he wasn't tempted. She put the gift box on the table. "Old patriarch, this junior has come to look for Mr. Dean. But Mr. Dean is one of your people, so it's best to talk in front of you and Mr. Dean. I have heard that Mr. Dean has recently created a weapon called military crossbow. Our Scott Consortium wants to buy the production and sales rights of this crossbow." Dean was surprised. He didn't expect that the Scott Consortium would get the news so quickly. Although Chai family was one of the 3 major shareholders of the Scott Consortium, but it would cost a lot of money to buy the items from the Temple of Elements. It showed the efficiency of the Scott Consortium and the depth of their information channels. Old Feline and Dean looked at Rosie. "This is Mr. Dean's private matter. He has the right to decide by himself. You could talk to him directly." Rosie was relieved as she heard this. She was worried that Dean would be bound by the contract with the Rhine Consortium. She would have to pay a lot more to grab the meat from the hands of the old fox. Chapter 257. We've heard about it. Rosie smiled. "I've heard from Master Kelt that your crossbow has the potential to be a 3-star item. Although the Element Association hasn't given an official appraisal, but our Scott Consortium believes in Master Kelt's vision. We also believe in your talent, so we intend to buy it at the price of a 3-star item." Dean didn't expect the Scott Consortium to be so generous this time. It was extremely risky to rely on Master Kelt's opinion. Every time an item was evaluated by the Element Association, it was decided by a number of professional masters. Sometimes there would be disputes during the discussion. Only the final vote would determine the evaluation result. Only one master's opinion could determine the approximate level of an item. However, the Scott Consortium dared to use the price of a 3-star item to buy a 2-star item. It was really generous. However, Dudian knew that the Scott Consortium was aware of the false dividends from a new textile machine. He looked at Rosie's beautiful cheeks and pondered a little. "I'll think about it first. I'm in a bit of a hurry." Rosie laughed. "Mr. Dean, the sooner you sell your crossbow, the higher the price you'll get. I believe that the price we offered is the limit. Even if other consortiums want to buy it, they won't get a high price. We have cooperated twice before, so we should trust each other more. If your New World Consortium wants to make your own crossbow, then the process will be very difficult. After all, your relationship with Melon Consortium isn't good." Dean knew what she meant. "I know, but it's too hasty. I need time to think about it." Rosie saw that he had his own idea. She frowned. "Mr. Dean, the price we offered is the price of a 3-star item. Even if the Element Association evaluates it as a 3-star item, you won't suffer a loss. But if it is a 2-star item, then the price will be more than double. Why do you? I have my own plans for this matter. Thank you for the trust of your consortium." Dean smiled. "I'll be the first to inform you when I'm ready." Rosie was silent for a moment as she stared at the teenager. She sighed. "Well, in any case, our Scott Consortium will always be your best ally. I hope that we will have a pleasant cooperation in the future." Well, Rosie said goodbye to Old Feline and left the restaurant under the guidance of the butler. Dean retracted his eyes and looked at Old Feline. Both of them didn't speak. Jake, who was sitting next to him, looked at Dean and Old Feline. They continued to eat and drink as if nothing had happened. He couldn't help but say, "Mr. Dean, this is a rare opportunity. If you continue to delay, then it will only be harmful. Why don't you agree directly?" Dean, who was cutting the steak, looked up at the man. He picked up a piece of steak and put it into his mouth. He gently chewed and lowered his head to continue to cut the steak. Steak should be eaten while it's hot. It's best when it's 70% hot. It won't burn your mouth, and you won't taste the fishy smell inside. If anyone eats the steak as soon as it's out of the pot, then it's either because they are hungry or the smell is too tempting. Wolves are pack animals. If a hungry wolf finds meat, the other wolves will also smell it and come over to snatch it. The wolf that obtains the meat in the end is the one that fights to the end and pays the most. Jake was stunned and speechless for a moment. After a while, lunch was over. Dean helped old Feline to get up and went upstairs to the study room. They were halfway there when the butler trotted in from outside. He bent down in front of old Feline and whispered, "Master, Huasheng Consortium has come." Huasheng? Old Feline was surprised. He looked at Dean and said to the butler, "Let him come in. I'm in the study room." The butler acknowledged and immediately turned around to leave. Dean helped old Feline back to the study room. He saw the butler coming in with a middle-aged man. The middle-aged man quickly looked at Dean, who was standing next to old Feline. There was a glimmer of light in his eyes. "I didn't expect Mr. Dean to be so young and as handsome as the rumors say." "It's a pleasure to meet you today," Dean smiled. "I'm flattered. If you're here to look for the patriarch, then I'll go out first. If you're here to look for me, then Miss Rosie from the Chai family has already come. She gave me a 3-star item. I'm still considering it. I won't agree if the price is lower than that." The smile on the middle-aged man's face stiffened. He didn't expect Dean to be so direct. He didn't expect the Scott Consortium to move so fast. He laughed. "Mr. Dean is really straightforward. I came to you to buy the new crossbow that you have created. I didn't expect Miss Rosie to come so fast. It seems that our Huasheng Consortium has no hope. The price we offered is the price of a 2-star item. It's only a little bit lower than a 3-star item. But if you cooperate with us, then I can give you a very helpful gift." "Oh." The middle-aged man laughed. "This gift is useless to others, but it may be useful to you. It's the map of the outside of the Death Passage. It's a map explored by senior hunters when our consortium rented it. Although it's not complete, but it should be a little helpful." Dean's eyes slightly moved as he thought for a moment. "I know. I'll think about it." "All right." The middle-aged man nodded. He knew that there wasn't much hope for the negotiation from the moment Dean told him about Rosie. He didn't want to waste his breath. Dean returned to the study room after the middle-aged man left. Old Feline asked, "Which consortium are you going to sell your new invention to? The efficiency is too slow, and it's easy to trap ourselves to death." Duddy nodded. Ryan family's current financial resources weren't enough to invest in large-scale crossbow manufacturing. They could only sell to consortiums or the temple. If they sold to consortiums, then the price would naturally be much higher than the price of the temple. But if they sold to the temple, they would get points. These points were extremely useful. They could be used to buy rare items that couldn't be bought in the outside market. For example, the Fountain of Life and other treasures. However, there are loopholes and dark sides to any rules. The dark side here was the underground black market. Therefore, Dean didn't intend to sell the crossbow to the Temple of Elements. Although the points he would get would help him reach senior architect level as soon as possible. But for him, gold coins were the most scarce. He could buy Fountain of Life in the black market with gold coins. As for the position of architect, he didn't care about it. The actual benefits were the real thing. What was the use of the title? Moreover, he had already seen through it. The so-called title was just a ladder given by the higher-ups. It seemed like one could climb to the top by following the ladder, but anyone who set the ladder would never allow others to climb the ladder to reach them. Even if it was an intermediate architect title, as long as he could earn more money than a master architect, Dean didn't care whether it was an intermediate or primary architect title. It didn't matter even if it was an apprentice architect title. My crossbow won't be inferior to the snake crossbow. It should be a 3-star item without a doubt. Even the most common 3-star item is fine. If I'm lucky and it's a 3-star item, the price will be at least several times higher. Dean said, "I'll sell it after the evaluation." Old Feline looked at him. "Are you so confident?" Chapter 258. Melon Consortium. Conference Hall. On both sides of the thick, long table sat more than a dozen deacons of the consortium. They represented the middle noble families. Mark and Rudolph were sitting in the main seats. Their names were still resounding in the commercial district. They had created their own glory. Now, they were the hegemons of their own business dynasties. Their family's industrial chain was spread across 3 regions and thousands of towns. Their names were more resounding than famous poets and dramatists. 7 or 8 years ago, the Maishan orphanage in the slums knew about the Mel family status. One could see the far-reaching influence of the Mel family. My assistant has passed the news to all of you. The main purpose of this meeting is to discuss the purchase of the new military item, the crossbow. Mark gently leaned on the back of the chair. His body didn't look bloated. His cheeks were firm and dignified. There was a faint smile on his face. According to the news from the Elemental Association, this item has been submitted to the Elemental Association by Master Kelt. It's being evaluated. The preliminary evaluation results are good. There's a 70% probability that it's a 3-star item. There shouldn't be many consortiums that know about this. Perhaps the Scott Consortium already knows about it, and so does the military. We need to get this divine artifact before they make their move. Recently, the war outside the borders has been very tense. The barbarians have repeatedly invaded our borders. If we can use this batch of divine artifacts in battle, it'll be worth even more than a 4-star military-grade artifact. Mark gently tapped his finger on the table. Moreover, if this crossbow can replace the other 3-star crossbows, then we will eliminate a 3-star item. At present, our consortium and the military are cooperating with each other. We don't have 3-star crossbows yet. The snake crossbow was bought by the Green Consortium. If this crossbow can replace the snake crossbow, then we can use it to attack the Green Consortium and squeeze some blood out of their hands. At this point, he glanced at the crowd and said with a smile, "Now, what do you think is the most suitable price for us to offer?" The people on both sides of the thick, long table looked at each other and exchanged glances with each other. After a moment, a graceful lady said, "Since this crossbow's function can overlap with another 3-star item, then it can also overlap with other items and be eliminated. I feel that the lowest price we can offer is a mid-grade 3-star item. After all, it's only a 70% chance of success. There's a 90% chance of success in the past, but in the end, the situation was completely reversed. Therefore, mid-grade 3-star is my bottom line." Hearing her words, many people nodded slightly. What she said made sense. Seconded. Agreed. Recently, the barbarians outside the border have been attacking us again and again, which has consumed a lot of military weapons. If a good military magic is used in the war, it can even change the course of the war. Although it can't recreate the legend of a crossbow dominating the battlefield, the return will be great. I suggest to treat it as a 3-star high-grade weapon. Yes, I agree. Everyone expressed their opinions one after another. One of them asked, "I heard that the young man who made this crossbow has a grudge with our consortium. Will he agree if we go to buy it?" Many people were surprised to hear this. One of them asked, "Grudge? What grudge? Is it because of that old guy, Old Feline?" The first person shook his head and looked at Rudolph. "Patriarch Boulong knows about it. I've only heard about it." Many people were surprised to hear Rudolph's words. Rudolph glanced at the person who had spoken. Then he glanced at the people around him. This person was a hunter of our consortium many years ago. He had offended the nobility and despised the nobility. I have severely punished him. Now he has abandoned the consortium and found Old Feline to support him. His conduct is improper, and he is vainly trying to retaliate against the consortium. My opinion is to refuse all cooperation with him. Everyone was shocked, but soon returned to normal. They quietly looked at each other. Someone immediately said, "We can't tolerate him despising the nobility. He is just a lowly civilian. He has forgotten his identity. I also suggest to sever all cooperation with him in the future. At the same time, we should list the New World Consortium as one of our business targets. Now he is studying in the temple. If he grows up in the future, he will be a hidden danger. We must eradicate him as soon as possible to preserve the interests of the consortium." Well, I agree with Mr. Missy. Even if we cooperate with such a rebellious person, it is inevitable that he will bite us in the future. 4 or 5 people expressed their views. Mark glanced at these people. His eyes flashed, but his face didn't show any thoughts. The others looked at each other with some regret in their eyes. They sighed and shook their heads, not saying anything. Things had already come to this, and they had already offended the other party. Unless they offer a higher price, it would be a waste of effort. Other consortiums or the military would definitely snatch the business away. If they offered a higher price to make up for the previous conflict, it would not be worth it. In short, because of this conflict, this business could only be abandoned. Rudolph was silent for a moment. He slowly got up and said, "This matter started because of our Bourong family. Please forgive us for the loss of benefits." He bowed slightly as he finished speaking. The people who had complained before were shocked. They didn't expect that a person like him would apologize in public. They were flattered and hurriedly got up to persuade him to return the courtesy. Mark also stood up and patted Rudolph's shoulder. "Brother, I don't blame you for this matter. Blame yourself for being too soft-hearted. You should have executed the kid who despised the nobility instead of letting him live to this day. In short, the New World Consortium will be included in the list of our enemy consortia. We must strangle them in the cradle before they grow up. This is the lightest price we have to pay. It's just a trifling 3-star item. Master Caro's work will come out in a while. We will usher in the glorious moment of our consortium. Yes, we will take advantage of the economic monopoly of the New World Consortium. Let's see how they will turn the situation around. Everyone, I already have a plan that can destroy them immediately." "Oh, let's hear it." Time passed by quickly. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. There was a castle by the Mosa River. The dark red curtains blocked the dazzling light from outside. The breeze would move the curtains from time to time. A few white shadows would come in through the gaps. At the moment, Dean was standing in the room. He looked at the towering mechanical assembly in the center of the room. From all angles, there was nothing missing. It integrated all the necessary parts of a lightning rod. The only drawback was that the conductor was short. It was only suitable for a 3-story castle. In the future, the cost of plastic materials will also have to be taken into account. Dean murmured. Finally, he carefully checked it again. After confirming that there were no errors, he disassembled it and put it into several suitcases. When all of them were packed, he came to the window and lifted the curtain. The sunlight was like snow sprinkling on his body. It was a bit dazzling. It seems that 3 days have passed. Dean looked at the sky outside. It's rare to see the good weather. The results of the element association should be out by now. I don't know if it will be of medium or high grade or fine quality. Thinking of this, there was a little expectation in his heart. He closed the window to avoid the wild cat jumping in. He turned around and picked up his suitcase and quickly went downstairs. He was the only one in the castle. Plus, the dim light made the place damp and gloomy. But he had seen the monsters outside the giant wall and had been exposed to the scientific world since childhood. He didn't believe in ghosts and gods, so he didn't feel afraid. Chapter 259. On the mountainside of Druga Mountain, in the divine hall between the fortress and the 11th fortress. At dawn, there were already hundreds of figures clustered in front of the door. Among them, only about half of them were dressed in the robes of the god's emissary. Most of them were outsiders who were dressed neatly and decently. These people were naturally the people sent by various consortiums and nobles to observe the situation. Among the many gods' emissaries, there were also some students sent by the masters and junior gods' emissaries who came to observe out of curiosity. "Hey, you're here too? Why are you here? Haha. Did you also see the notice posted last night? The Element Association has already evaluated you, and today it will be included in the exchange table. TSK. I wonder how many points are needed to exchange. Definitely a lot. After all, the worst one is a 2-star item. If it's good, it might even be a 3-star item. Do you want to exchange? Don't joke around. I'm not going to waste my money. I'm just here to look at the introduction on the exchange page and see how powerful this thing is." Me too. The people in front of the hall discussed in low voices. When the sunlight pierced through the corner of the temple, the 8-meter-high gate of the temple slowly opened. An old man stood in front of the gate and glanced at the crowd outside. His eyelids drooped, and he staggered into the temple. "Old Shi, you're up early today. Go quickly." The people waiting in front of the stairs immediately rushed in. Soon, The crowd arrived at the hall of the divine incantation hall and immediately looked at the bulletin board. Whenever a new incantation appeared, it would be posted on the bulletin board of the divine incantation hall for a day as free publicity. After the first day, it would be listed in the exchange list of the divine incantation hall. Therefore, many people would often neglect the most suitable incantation because of their own carelessness when exchanging for an incantation. When everyone looked over, they immediately saw that the first page of the notice board was filled with 4 familiar words. Military, crossbow. It was the divine art piece that had been the talk of the town for the past few days. When everyone's gaze shifted from the huge words to the ranking evaluation below, the hall instantly fell into a dead silence. 4 stars. In a short period of dead silence, a person swallowed his saliva and spoke with a trembling voice. The icy silence was immediately broken. Everyone was in an uproar as they looked at the ranking evaluation in shock. The 4 dazzling purple stars were extremely eye-catching and firmly attracted everyone's eyes. 4-star purple item. Not only is this item a 4-star item, but it's also a 4-star upper grade item. This is too unreasonable. Could it be that the evaluation standards have been lowered? This is too exaggerated. Is this done by a newcomer? Wasn't it rumored that it only took half a day to make? What's this newcomer's name? He's too fierce. While they were in disbelief, many people quickly reacted and looked at the details of the functions below. With that, they were shocked again. Oh my God, it's a melee weapon. This crossbow is actually for close combat. This is going to break the record. A close-range crossbow can actually get a 4-star upper grade evaluation. Did the Elemental Association make a mistake? Look, it says that the crossbow has a range of about 100 to 200 meters. No wonder it's a melee weapon. It's amazing. How did they make such a crossbow? Almost all of the people who were shocked by the effects of the crossbow were wood element architects. They knew the knack of the crossbow. Some people squeezed out of the crowd and went to the exchange counter. They went to the old man she who had opened the door to complete the exchange procedures. The people sent by other consortiums and nobles quickly recorded the functions and effects of the crossbow. They immediately squeezed out of the crowd and left the hall. For 4-star upper grade? Inside the Scott Financial Group's conference room, Chasto couldn't help but cry out as he opened the report. Even with his mental fortitude, this news shocked him to the point of forgetting himself. The people on both sides of the long table who were waiting for the results were stunned. In Orion Castle, Sandro hurriedly ran into the study and almost fell at the door. He pushed the door open with a flushed face, and his body was trembling with excitement. Father, it's a 4-star. It's actually a 4-star. 4 stars? Old Feline was startled. After a moment, there was a smile on his old face. Melon Consortium. Conference room. The Melon Consortium didn't hold a meeting today as they had given up the cooperation with Dean and New World Consortium. However, today was the weekly financial meeting of the consortium. Mark was talking about the financial market of the consortium when he heard a knock on the door. Come in, Mark said in a patient tone. He didn't like to be disturbed when he was talking. The door opened, and a young man dressed as a gentleman carefully came in. Mark's eyes lit up as he saw the young man. Good at meeting room. If it's not an important matter, then you know the consequences. The young man panicked as he saw the stiff expression on Mark's face. Patriarch, I'm here to report the news about Mr. Dean's new invention. Mark coldly snorted. Get out of here. A middle-aged man who was sitting next to him smiled. Mr. Mel, since he has come then, let him talk about the news. We also want to know what kind of movement this little guy can make. Is it really a 3-star item? Yes. Let him finish talking before he leaves. He's already here. Several people tried to persuade the young man. Mark looked at the young man. I'll give you 10 seconds. The young man's face turned pale. The result is out. It's a 4-star item. It's a close combat weapon. Aye. That's all. He was worried about the 10 seconds. He looked at Mark as he was afraid that he would exceed the time limit. However, he found that Mark's expression was frozen. Rudolph was standing behind Mark with a gloomy expression on his face. He was stunned for a moment. a building in the ninth castle of the Temple of Elements. A teenager wearing a primary architect's robe rushed into a room in a panic. He immediately saw Tiffany sitting on the windowsill. Tiffany was sitting next to a piano. Her sitting posture was elegant, as if she was a graceful pianist. However, her nearly 1.8 meters tall body had erased the gentleness and softness. Instead, she had a bit of firmness and majesty about her. She didn't know how to play the piano, but she loved it. At this moment, she was stroking the piano keys. Hearing the boy's rapid breathing, her eyelids twitched slightly, and some dark clouds that had been suppressed in the bottom of her heart suddenly became a little heavier. She slowly put away her fingers on the piano and calmly said, "Is it really 3 stars?" Chapter 260. No, it's not. The youth's face was complex. It's not a 3-star item. The result of the evaluation was unexpected. It's a 4-star item. Tiffany was relieved, but was stunned when she heard the youth's words. 4-star item? High-grade item? Tiffany looked at the youth. She suspected that she had an auditory hallucination. The youth smiled. Yes, the news is spread outside. It's the first 4-star military item in 5 years. Moreover, it's the highest level of close combat crossbow. Close combat crossbow? Tiffany was startled once again. Her mind was in chaos. She suddenly remembered the scene a few days ago in the temple. She had seen a young and arrogant figure. Although she couldn't remember his face, but his dark and deep eyes were more and more clear. They were like 2 demonic stars in the night, cold and gloomy. 4-star top grade, close combat crossbow. She muttered to herself. In just half a day, the news about the military crossbow swept through all the major consortiums like a hurricane. It also swept through all the castles of the Temple of Elements. Even the primary architects were aware of the news. After all, the emergence of a top-grade 4-star item. Although it couldn't change the world like a legendary item, it would still promote a great change in certain parts of the world and even create a new pattern. Moreover, this time it was produced by the strongest newcomer who had just won the epic medal. The news spread very fast. It wasn't inferior to a 5-star item produced by a master. Of course, it wasn't inferior to a 5-star item produced by a master. Churchill. The youth was driving the carriage slowly on the mountain road. 3 or 5 teenagers wearing primary architect's robes were walking together. They were eagerly discussing things. They passed by the youth who was driving the carriage. They didn't recognize the coachman as the one they were talking about. Dean was surprised as he passed by the primary architects. 4-star top grade? Close combat crossbow? Are they talking about my work? He looked in the direction of the 10 castles. Most of the primary architects had come back from the Temple of the 10 Castles. He was surprised, although he expected that the military crossbow would be very practical, but he didn't expect that the Temple of Elements would give it such a high evaluation. It seems that it's very difficult for a senior architect to make a 4-star crossbow. A senior architect who can make 2 4-star crossbows is basically qualified to be promoted to a master architect. However, the premise is that they have to hand over 2 4-star artifacts to the Temple of Elements to exchange for points. There was a smile on Dean's face. He thought that it would be a 3-star or high-grade crossbow. Now it seemed that the value of this crossbow was far higher than what he had imagined. Apart from the new textile machine, this was his first official work after joining the Temple of Elements. It was enough to suppress all the criticism. Although he didn't care about these criticisms, it represented a kind of value to be valued by people. However, it was not a good thing for him to take such a high step. When a military crossbow was born, his existence in the New World Consortium would no longer be invisible. The hidden threat should have already been noticed by the other consortiums. While he was receiving praise and praise, he would also be accompanied by knives and knives. However, he had already expected this. That's why he declined the invitations of the nobles for entertainment and dinner. Instead, he worked hard to make lightning rods in his castle. Dean shook the reins and changed the direction. He didn't continue to go to the Temple of Elements. It would be overcrowded if he was recognized. There was no need to waste time to be in the limelight. Dean drove the carriage back to the seventh castle. He saw 6 or 7 figures standing at the entrance of the castle. They were looking left and right. One of them was Bernard. He was surprised for a moment, but immediately guessed what was going on. He jumped out of the carriage and carried a few suitcases out of the carriage. He walked along the small ramp towards the castle. Bernard and the others saw Dean when they were about 100 or 200 meters away from him. They were pleasantly surprised as they rushed to greet him. Dean! Dean! Mr. Dean! Bernard took the lead and ran over so many things. Let me help you. He raised his hand to grab a suitcase that was hooked by Dean's little finger. His arm sank as he lifted it. What's inside? It's so heavy. Is it metal? At this time, the other 4 or 5 people also ran over one after another. Among them, there was a tall and slender young woman with snow-white skin. She was also a divine emissary of the same castle. Her beautiful eyes flickered with an extraordinary splendor. She stood behind the crowd and carefully sized up this young man. I'll help you. I'll help. Several youths enthusiastically came forward to help Dean. Dean was afraid that they would make too much noise and damage the parts inside. Don't. I'll do it myself. Don't damage it. Seeing that he didn't want to be polite, they immediately stopped. One of them looked at Bernard and laughed. Little Bernard, you're too weak. You're so tired carrying a box. Lil Bo is acting. Another young man laughed loudly. The veins on Bernard's arms bulged and his neck swelled. He gasped, Don't make sarcastic remarks. They saw that the atmosphere wasn't as strange as it was at the beginning. One of them enthusiastically said to Dean, Dean, congratulations. You are worthy to be the chosen one who won the Epic Medal. You are able to create a 4-star item. Praise the God of Light. Dean looked at the person. It seemed that it was the first time they met. He modestly said, It's a fluke. Dean, what you said is wrong. You are the accumulation of knowledge. I saw you go to the library every day. Now you're able to create a 4-star item by yourself. It has nothing to do with luck. Another pretended to correct Dean. Dean smiled but didn't say anything. The crowd followed him all the way and praised him. One of them asked, Dean, are you going to sell your 4-star crossbow to the temple or consortium? The others looked at Dean with envy. If he sold it to the temple, then he would immediately become a senior architect. If he sold it to the consortium, it would be a huge fortune. Most of them, like Bernard, came from ordinary families in the commercial district. They relied on their own hard work to be selected into the Temple of Elements. Step by step, they climbed their way to where they were today. Even the nobles were envious of the wealth they could get from selling a top-grade 4-star item. For them, it was enough to let them enjoy a carefree life. They were completely free from the boring work of studying the divine arts. Dean looked at him. I'll think about it. The young man's eyes lit up and said, I suggest you sell to a consortium. As far as I know, the Green Consortium is not bad. They have deep financial resources and can certainly sell for a good price. If you need it, I will help you contact them. Dean smiled. Do you have a relationship with the Green Consortium? The young man saw the surprised looks on everyone's face and showed a bit of pride, saying, My uncle lives with the Glinton family of the Glinton Financial Group. He is the coachman of the Glinton Patriarch. If my uncle is the middleman, the Glinton family will definitely pay a high price. Bernard laughed. Dean's 4-star crossbow won't be able to sell for money even without your uncle's help. The youth's face turned red. I'm sure I can sell it, but the price will be better if I have an acquaintance. Dean saw his thoughts and smiled. Let's talk about this later. He picked up the boxes and entered the building. He saw an old figure coming down from the stairs. It was Henson. Henson also saw Dean and Bernard. He was surprised for a moment. He looked at Dean. Are you going to make a new invention with so many boxes? Dean nodded, but didn't say anything. Congratulations. Henson came over and said in a resentful tone. Dean smiled. It was a fluke. There was a trace of bitterness in Henson's eyes. He didn't say anything as he passed by Dean. The others saw that the dialogue between Henson and Dean was a bit strange. They had speculations in their hearts, but their faces didn't change. Dean was sent to the door of the room. He put all the suitcases back into the room. He politely declined them and closed the door. He looked for a pen and paper to draw the design drawings of the lightning rod. However, just as he was about to start on the draft, another guest came in. Dean didn't open the door, but smelled a familiar smell. He opened the door and saw that it was Rosie, who he had met a few days ago. She was wearing a black gauze dress. Her tall figure and low-cut dress made her look extremely sexy. She was full of the charm of a mature woman. "Mr. Dean." Rosie's eyes lit up as she saw Dean open the door. There was an eager smile on her face. "I haven't seen you for a long time. I'm here to bother you again." Dean smiled. "It's good that you know I'm bothering you." Chapter 261. Rosie giggled. "Mr. Dean, I took the liberty to come and disturb you mainly to congratulate you. You have just joined the Temple of Elements, and yet you have produced a top-grade 4-star invention. It's really admirable. We were misled by Master Kelt and thought that your work was a 3-star invention. I didn't expect Master Kelt to be wrong and underestimate your work." Dudian smiled. "I don't dare to say that it's amazing. Master Kelt didn't look at it in depth. He was able to give a 3-star evaluation. I admire his keen eyesight." Rosie looked at him deeply. "Mr. Dean didn't promise me before. It was a wise move. Otherwise, I would have felt sorry. Fortunately, it's not too late now. Scott Consortium has decided to buy your military crossbow at the price of a 4-star quality product. What do you think, Mr. Dean?" "Quality product?" Dudian didn't expect her to directly give a higher price. "My work is only top grade. Your consortium will suffer a loss." "Businessmen don't make a loss." Rosie smiled in a natural and unrestrained manner. "It's just that the profit is a little less. This is also the sincerity of our Scott Consortium. Moreover, we have cooperated with Mr. Dean twice before, so we can be considered as old acquaintances. A little more preferential treatment is only right." Dudian glanced at her. Rosie was easy to make a good impression on people based on the way she spoke. But he wouldn't let go of the fact that the Scott Consortium had falsified the accounts. He pondered, "I'll think about it." Rosie was surprised. "Mr. Dean, are you not satisfied with it?" Dudian shook his head. "I need to discuss this matter with old Feline. After all, I was employed by his family as a hunter. His family bailed me out of prison and clear my name. Although the terms of the hunter contract didn't require that my work belong to the Ryan family. But I have to repay this kindness." Rosie knew about Dudian's experience. She was speechless as she didn't know what to say. She quickly thought, "Mr. Dean, you should know more about the situation of the Ryan family than us. Even if you sell it to them at a lower price, they won't be able to mass produce it. In the end, they will have to find business partners to cooperate with them. If you sell it to us, then I can promise you that the profits of the crossbow will go to the Ryan family." Dudian was surprised. He didn't expect the girl to have so much power that she could promise such a big concession on the spot. He pretended to ponder for a moment and said, "Let's talk to old patriarch first so as to avoid being rude." Rosie didn't expect Dudian to hesitate in the face of such conditions. Her face slightly changed. Her eyes flashed for a moment. "In that case, if old Feline agrees, then I ask Mr. Dean to consider our Scott Consortium first. We can talk about the conditions later. If you need anything else, then you can tell me. I'll go back to the consortium and help you fight for it." "You will absolutely be satisfied. Thank you." Dudian thanked her. Rosie saw that Dudian's face didn't change. She sighed in her heart. She knew that the matter was hanging by a thread, but she didn't admit defeat. After thinking for a moment, she said, "Mr. Dean, please pass a word to old Feline. If he agrees, then our Scott Consortium is willing to form an alliance with a New World Consortium." Dudian's eyelids twitched, but he soon thought a point. His heart calmed down. Alliance was certainly the most helpful thing for the New World Consortium. But the Scott Consortium's approach was to form an alliance with a New World Consortium. If it was an unequal alliance, then the significance of the alliance would be greatly reduced. "I'll pass the message to old Feline," Dudian said. Rosie sighed and suddenly thought of something. She whispered, "By the way, I'll tell Mr. Dean the news that I just learned. The market in the Pine Cone town wasn't founded by the Melon Consortium. It was founded by the Bourong family alone. The purpose wasn't to target the New World Consortium, but to target you. Moreover, they didn't use the economic monopoly of the pine cone market to suppress you. Instead, they used another insidious method to insult Mr. Dean's character. Insult? Du Dian's eyes moved as he looked at her. Rosie whispered, "The Bourong family will find a rich businessman to help the Ryan family when the pine cone market monopolizes the economy of the nearby towns. They will use the Ryan family to get close to you. Then they will design a series of traps to trap you. As far as I know, you have a past with Miss Jenny of the Bourong family. The purpose of Rudolph's action is to discredit you and make his daughter completely give up on you." Du Dian was silent for a moment as he looked at her. "Your Chai family's intelligence network is quite well informed." Rosie smiled. "After all, we are enemies of the Melon Consortium. Naturally, we will pay more attention to them. Whether Mr. Dean is willing to sell the new item to the Scott Consortium or not, I'll pass on the news that they're going to frame you or suppress the New World Consortium." Du Dian looked at her. He had to say that this woman had commendable ability as she was sent to discuss business. Even though he had a knot in his heart due to the Scott Consortium falsifying the accounts, he couldn't help but be moved by her actions. However, he was no longer a weak child. He would return any kindness with kindness. Not to mention that the other side was trying to fight for the final crossbow. Even if she was really kind, he would treat her coldly if she hindered his progress. The law of the jungle was the survival of the fittest. "Thank you." Du Dian thanked her again. Rosie looked at him but didn't say anything. When she was about to leave, she suddenly saw a few black metal objects in a room behind the door. She was slightly startled. "Mr. Dean, are you creating a new invention?" Du Dian saw that she had noticed the lightning rod, but didn't care. "Yes." Rosie was surprised. "This seems to be metal. Aren't you a wood element architect? Why would you create a new invention using metal elements?" Du Dian smiled. "You will know after I create it." Rosie saw that Du Dian didn't want to disclose. "Mr. Dean, can I pre-order the new invention? I'll buy it at the price of a 3-star item." She regretted her words. Although Du Dian had created a 4-star item, but who knew what the new invention would be? Even for many masters who have been famous for many years, they would usually only produce 1- or 2-star items. Occasionally, they would produce 3- or 4-star items. As for producing 5-star items, it was a rare thing for a master to do even once in a decade. Du Dian shook his head. "It's too low. If you give me the price of a 5-star item, then I can pre-order it to you." Rosie was stunned and immediately laughed twice. "Mr. Dean, you are really humorous." Du Dian shrugged. Rosie was helpless as she said goodbye to Du Dian and left. Du Dian closed the door after she left. He didn't expect that the purpose of the Pinetown market would be so deep. Although it was possible that Rosie made it up as he couldn't verify it, but the possibility was very low. Moreover, it was in line with the style of the Bourong family. From an objective point of view, he could completely understand Rudolph's approach, but from his own point of view, he couldn't tolerate repeated violations. Melon Consortium, Bourong family, Mel family. Du Dian gently rubbed his fingers as he thought about the matter. That night, Du Dian returned to the Ryan family by car. Old Feline looked at Du Dian in the study room. "Rosie must be aware of your refusal. Did you tell her about the new textile machine?" "No." Du Dian leaned on the sofa and rubbed his temples. "It's meaningless to talk about the past." "Yes." Old Feline was relieved. "There is no evidence. It's just our speculation. We won't get any compensation. Even if we get it, it will be because of the face of the crossbow. It's meaningless." Du Dian rubbed his temples and closed his eyes. "Is there any information from other consortia?" In the afternoon, the Green Financial Group, Huasheng Financial Group, and even the military sent people over to discuss the matter of your crossbow. The price and conditions they offered were similar to Scott's. Now that the evaluation has been given, they can't lower the price. Now it's up to who can raise the price by how much. In addition, I've already inquired about it. Recently, the border battlefield has been busy with military supplies, and that group of barbarians is causing a ruckus again. Your crossbow can be considered lucky. During the war, I reckon that a small part of the reason why it was evaluated as a 4-star high-grade crossbow is because of this. Chapter 262. Border War. Dean was surprised. He had heard of these words before, but he didn't have time to understand them. Does it refer to the war inside the giant wall? Old Feline nodded. The border mainly refers to the radiation zone outside the fortress. In the high radiation zone between the fortress and the giant wall, in addition to the monsters, there are some barbarians who have been expelled. They look similar to us, but their physique is huge. They call themselves ancestors, but we are used to calling them barbarians. In fact, they're no different from beasts. They drink blood and are bloodthirsty and warlike. They even eat babies of their own kind. They are extremely cruel. The barbarians have repeatedly invaded the territory. They want to invade the living areas and plunder resources. The duty of the army is to guard the fortress and resist the barbarians and monsters. Dean was startled as he heard Old Feline's words. He didn't expect that there would be barbarians living in that desolate area. They call themselves ancestors. Do they mean the survivors of the previous era? Are they the descendants of the survivors who survived the disaster 300 years ago? Dean was puzzled, but all the people in the giant wall should be the descendants of the survivors. If they are the descendants of the survivors, they should be living a comfortable life. They should be in the center of the new era. How could they be expelled to the border? He thought for a moment, but couldn't find a clue. 300 years wasn't a long time, but it wasn't a short time either. Perhaps the ancestors of the barbarians didn't directly trace back to the previous era. It was possible that they were eliminated during the struggle for power inside the giant wall. Are there a lot of barbarians? Dean asked Old Feline. It should be very difficult to survive in the radiation zone. Moreover, if the radiation is too strong, then they will be sterilized. Why haven't they become extinct after such a long time of fighting? Old Feline shook his head and sighed. Logically, it should be so. But the fact is that the number of barbarians hasn't decreased, but is increasing year by year. The military couldn't easily annihilate the barbarians by relying on the fortress to defend. The military is having a headache because of this matter. That's why in recent years, the military didn't intervene in the secret transactions of other consortia. Dean slightly frowned. Didn't the Holy Church intervene in this matter? The Holy Church and the military are in the same boat. Naturally, they will help the military. But the Holy Church has to fight against the Dark Church. How can they allocate a large number of troops to reinforce the war at the border? Old Feline sighed. In recent years, the military has launched 6 forced conscription in the residential and slum areas. The people have been resentful. Only the commercial district is relatively peaceful. Dean thought, the Dark Church should know about this matter. The Temple of Elements prohibits human body research, but the Dark Church's alchemists don't. Perhaps the military has secretly commissioned the Dark Church's alchemists to help them find the secret of the increase in the number of barbarians. If the barbarians reproduce, then they must have evolved antibodies to resist high levels of radiation. If these antibodies are sold on a large scale, then it would be no less than a life-saving medicine for the people in the slums and residential areas. Moreover, this thing is also useful to me. I don't have a light physique. If the radiation value accumulates to more than 4 points, then the next time I go hunting, the accumulation of radiation value will increase rapidly. Even if I go outside the giant wall once or twice, the radiation value will soar to more than 10 points. The power of radiation will cause obvious damage to the body, such as skin deformation, body deformity, and even sterilization. I can only spend a lot of money to buy holy water from the Holy Church. If the barbarians really have antibodies to high radiation, then it will be an inexhaustible source of light holy water for me. I can even give myself the light physique. Dean's eyes lit up as he thought about it. Old Feline saw that Dean was silent, so he didn't disturb him. After a moment, Dean recovered and asked Old Feline, "Did the Melon Consortium send us an invitation to buy the barbarians?" Old Feline was surprised as he didn't expect Dean to suddenly jump to consortium matters. No, They should know that you and the Borong family don't have a good relationship, so they don't want to lose face. It should be more than that. Dean's eyes were deep as he said, "Perhaps they are ready to officially attack us." Old Feline's face changed for a moment. He sighed. "Your fame is tantamount to giving them a warning. The best way to eradicate you in the cradle is to save resources. If they want to attack us, then the market of Pinetown is a good springboard. In addition, they can strangle our economy from the surrounding cotton industry. The yard town is in danger and the taxes are very low. We can only rely on the dividends of the new textile machine from the Scott Consortium and the crossbow that you sold to support us. But it's not a long-term solution." Dean looked at him. "If they want to attack us, then they won't start from the cotton industry. They won't start from the market of Pinetown and the yard town either. These are small industries. Even if they completely plunder them, it won't be enough to make a tenth of the dividends of the new textile machine." Old Feline's face slightly changed. "Do they want to start from the Scott Consortium? They are enemies. Will they join hands to deal with us? It's not surprising that the enemies will join hands if they can get rid of another eyesore. But the Scott Consortium won't join hands with them. Instead, they will take advantage of this opportunity to win us over." Dean's eyes were deep as he slowly said, "Old consortiums like the Mellon Consortium will use formal commercial competition to suppress us. The efficiency is too slow, and it is difficult to directly dig out the roots. If they use some dirty dark means to crush us, it would be as simple as crushing an ant." Old Feline's eyelids twitched as his face turned ugly. This was the deepest worry in his heart. He was so worried that he didn't want to bring it up. But at the moment Dean said it out loud, he knew that it was inevitable. Formal commercial means couldn't help the Mellon Consortium to reach the point it was today. A consortium that stood above many rich businessmen didn't rely on pure financial resources. Instead, it relied on their connections and connections. They sent people to assassinate you last time. They won't use this method this time. If they want to assassinate me, then I'm just an old man. They can see that the consortium is relying on you. Moreover, the one who can threaten them is you, not me." Old Feline slowly said after a moment of silence. Dean narrowed his eyes. "There are too many means to deal with us. We can't guard against them one by one, so we don't need to guard against them. The best defense is offense." Old Feline looked at him in surprise. "We're going to attack? The Mellon Consortium?" This was tantamount to hitting a stone with an egg. Dean slowly said, "Although the Mellon Consortium is a behemoth and indestructible for us, but the structure of the Mellon Consortium isn't a whole. We need a dagger to kill a person from the outside. But if we want to kill them from the inside, we only need to make them swallow a small rusty piece of iron. Moreover, we don't need to waste our physical strength." Old Feline was startled. After a moment, he stared at him. "Since you have anticipated this, then you must have made some plans and preparations. Tell me, how do you want me to cooperate with you?" There was a touch of smile on Dean's face. "I need you to help me find some helpers after I get the money." "Helpers?" Old Feline was surprised. "Where can I find them?" Chapter 263. When Dean returned to his castle from the Ryan Castle, he saw an exquisite aristocratic carriage with a black serpent pattern on it. His eyes moved as he drove the carriage straight to his castle. A butler was standing outside the aristocratic carriage. He heard the sound of the wheels and immediately looked back. When he saw that it was Dean, his eyes lit up. He bent down and whispered to the person inside the carriage. A soft hum was heard from inside the carriage. The curtain was slowly lifted, revealing a gentle and beautiful face with the grace of a mature woman. Her jade-like eyes were gently sizing up the young man who was driving the carriage. What surprised her was that this young man was very different from what she had expected. He was not like a new star that had just risen from the east, high-spirited and vigorous. Instead, he was like a shadow in the depths of the darkness, calm and cold. It seemed that even the scorching heat of the Black Death season would cool down 3 feet around him. After a deep look, she slowly opened the door and got out of the carriage. She stood on the dry stone road. There was a white flower in front of her black shoes. Her soft black skirt was almost sticking to the ground. Her exposed snow-white ankles were amazing. She stood beside the door and quietly watched Dean slowly approaching. She softly said, "You are Mr. Dean. I took the liberty to disturb you." Dean had long noticed that the woman was dressed like a lady. She seemed to be in her 20s, but dressed like a woman in her 30s. She had an elegant temperament. There was only a very faint smell of men on her body. It could be seen that she was a clean woman. She might even be a single woman. His eyes were calm as he calmly said, "Hello, what's the matter? Can we go to your castle to talk?" The woman asked in a gentle voice. Dean roughly guessed the purpose of her visit. "If you want to talk about the purchase of the crossbow, please directly state the price. I will integrate the conditions put forward by the consortia and make the final choice. If you want to talk about future cooperation, I'm sorry, but I don't plan to leave the New World Consortium." Granita didn't expect Dean to be so direct. She was startled for a moment, but gently said, "Mr. Dean, I represent the Krulov Consortium. I want to talk about the above two things. In addition, I know that Mr. Dean has received kindness from the Ryan family. But the pattern of the Ryan family is only so big. When the sun rises in the sky, there will be thousands of feet of light. If the sun rises from the shoal, then the shoal will be the first target to be burned." She paused and continued, "What the Ryan family can give Mr. Dean, we can also give far more than them. So I hope Mr. Dean can consider it, because this is a good thing for you and the Ryan family." Dudian pulled the reins and stopped the carriage. He sat on the board and quietly looked at her. After a moment, he slowly said, "If your consortium wants to have a closer relationship with me, then you have to cooperate with the New World Consortium. I will never withdraw from the New World Consortium." Granita was startled. She didn't expect that Dean wouldn't move even after she made it clear. She frowned. "Mr. Dean, the New World Consortium won't be able to accommodate you. Your existence will provoke an irresistible enemy for the New World Consortium. Moreover, the New World Consortium won't be able to protect you if you encounter trouble." Dean looked at her and slowly said, "I hope that the Krulov Consortium isn't one of the enemies of the New World Consortium." At the same time, he said in his heart, "At least not now." When Granita heard his words, she sighed and said, "Since Mr. Dean is so determined, I won't force you. But please rest assured that the goodwill of the Krulov Consortium will always be there. We welcome you to join us at any time." Suddenly, he thought of something. He took out an emerald card from the handbag and handed it to Dean. "This is my personal business card. It is also a VIP card for all the properties under my command. Please accept it as a thank you for the intrusion." Dean took it and glanced at the name, Granita. This name is a bit familiar. Dean's eyes slightly moved as he calmly put away the card. Granita sighed. There was still a bit of regret in her heart. She turned around and got into her carriage. Dean didn't continue to stay. He shook the rope and went past the vehicles to enter his castle. "Madam," the butler asked after Dean had left the carriage. "Is that it?" Granita whispered. "He will naturally come after the Melon Consortium or other consortiums. Let's go back." Dean calmed down after entering the castle. He sat in front of the desk in his room. He took out a piece of paper and began to draw new drawings. If he didn't have the fountain of life to heal his arm, then he would have considered making firearms. But now there was hope for his arm to recover, so he intended to continue the route of making cold weapons. As for firearms, they were far less of a threat to him. The destructive power of a bow and arrow would increase with the quality of the bow and the user's own physique. The higher the physique, the higher the lethality of the arrow. But firearms were constant. Ordinary people and senior hunters could use them, but the power was the same. He felt that once his physique reached the limit of a senior hunter, the destructive power of the arrows would not be inferior to bullets. It would even exceed the speed of most rifle bullets. As for the destructive power, he could use the previous idea of pouring mercury into the arrowhead to improve it. After reading the super chip, he found out that his unintentional idea coincided with an international banned bullet from the old era. This bullet was the Dum-Dum bullet. The Dum-Dum bullet had a terrifying destructive power. It was known as the Bullet of Death. The arrowhead was made based on the dum-dum bullet principle. The destructive power would exceed the firearms, so the production could be delayed. After all, if guns were to be invented and accidentally made by other consortiums or the Radiant Church, then mass-produce them, it would be like a thorn in the throat for hunters like them. They would be at the mercy of others, and they would completely lose their freedom and their deterrence. Moreover, the fall of the hunter profession was secondary. The magistrate would also lose its deterrent force in the face of firearms. Once the magistrate lost its deterrent force, the magistrate would be useless. It would no longer have the power to enforce the law. The giant wall would fall into chaos. Therefore, although it was easy to make a gun, but to eliminate the chain reaction brought by firearms was as difficult as ascending to the sky. He didn't want to live in fear all the time. He didn't want ordinary people to lurk around him and kill him. If the firearms were to be produced, then the pattern of the giant wall would completely evolve into an era where firearms determine the order. There would be rivers of blood and chaos in the struggle for power. Dean's eyes flashed. This was what he didn't want to see. He preferred to use the law of darkness to destroy the order and then create his own order. Gunpowder has been banned, as have other items with great destructive power. However, these items are far inferior to firearms. There are too many factors required for gunpowder to explode, which greatly limits the threat of gunpowder. That's why it didn't cause chaos. Dean gently tapped the table with the pen. The accumulation of wealth is enough if there is a lightning rod in a short period of time. If we immediately create other things, then it will arouse suspicion. Moreover, the momentum of the rise will be so fast that all the consortiums will be afraid of us. It will destroy ourselves. The next step is to consider the force of the consortium. At present, there are no senior hunters in the consortium. This is one of the reasons why the other consortiums despise us. A senior hunter is enough to make the other consortiums a little afraid. It is equivalent to the nuclear weapons of the old era. If the consortium's wealth is suppressed or they are forced into a desperate situation by other means, then they can send senior hunters to assassinate the enemy. Although the senior hunters can't escape the magistrate's hunt, but it will give the other consortiums some deterrence. No one is willing to exchange their life with the hunter's life. Dean secretly thought, if the number of hunters is enough, then the other consortiums won't dare to easily offend them. With the current financial resources, it is difficult to go to the regular hunter school to attract new hunters. Moreover, they have to buy magic marks for them. The cost is too high. I can only rely on hunting outside the giant wall to be self-sufficient. Thinking of this, he immediately began to draw the blueprint. Time passed. 2 days passed. The military crossbow storm hadn't dissipated in the consortiums and the Temple of Elements. In these 2 days, in addition to the Melon Consortium, the other 5 consortiums all looked for Dean or Old Fuline. They wanted to buy the crossbow. The military also looked for Dean and offered a price that was nearly 1/3 higher than the other consortiums. After careful selection and discussion with Old Fuline, Dean finally chose the Huashan Consortium. Considering the next plan of cleaning outside the giant wall, if he had Huashan Consortium's map, it would naturally be twice the result with half the effort. However, Dean and Old Fuline didn't let go of this opportunity to make a big profit. They blackmailed Huashan Consortium almost to the bottom line. In addition to the map being a free gift, the price was raised to the price of a 4-star quality map. Moreover, Ryan family had shares in several industries of Huashan Consortium. They could get regular dividends and have the right to decide the direction of these industries. The contract was finally signed and both sides were happy. Dean and Old Fuline knew that although it seemed that the other side had been greatly optimized during the negotiations, but for Huashan Consortium, these industries seemed to be important. In fact, they could be abandoned at any time. Moreover, they wouldn't lose even half a share of the profits of the consortium. In case of a falling out, they could use some methods to kick Old Fuline out of the board of directors and cut off the dividends. 460,000 gold coins. Old Fuline repeatedly counted the numbers. His wrinkled face bloomed. Even though he had witnessed the glory of the Ryan family in his youth, He had never seen such a large amount of savings. If he wasn't psychologically prepared, he would have lost control of himself on the spot. Dudian smiled. This was the value of an architect. It was also the charm of a 4-star military item. If it was a 1-star item, then it could be sold for thousands of gold coins. If it was a 2-star item, then it could be sold for 6,000 to 10,000 gold coins. 3-star items were much higher. At least 50,000 to 100,000 gold coins were sold for 3-star items. His crossbow was not only a top-grade item, but also a top-grade one. Moreover, it was sold at the peak of 4-star level during the border war. Moreover, 5-star items were worth millions of gold coins. Each one of them was a must-have item for the aristocracy. They were spread to the 3 regions, as well as the inner wall. The profits were innumerable. Our background is comparable to that of the aristocracy. Old Feline sighed with emotion. Their wealth was close to that of the Milan family. But in terms of contacts and industry, they still couldn't be compared with the Milan family. The latter's real estate wealth could easily kill the Milan family savings. Dudian smiled. This money is enough to redeem people. More than enough. It's more than enough. Old Feline smiled. You shouldn't go outside the giant wall in the future. Wait until you buy the fountain of life to cure your arm. Then you can stay inside the giant wall and study the invention. If you can make a military crossbow, then we will have a complete turnaround. Old Feline was happy to hear this. Dudian smiled. Money is useful if you spend it. If you don't spend it, or if others don't give you the opportunity to spend it, then it's just a string of numbers. Hunters are the foundation of a consortium. It's too difficult for us to catch up with other consortia, but it's much easier to cultivate a few senior hunters. Old Feline turned to look at him. Are you going to become a senior hunter and assassinate the people of the Melon Consortium? Dudian smiled. Do I look like such a stupid person? That's good. Old Feline was relieved. If you assassinate the senior members of the consortium, then it will inevitably cause a collective panic. They will use all their connections to get the magistrate involved in the investigation. It will be difficult to guarantee that you will be able to escape. Even if you assassinate the senior members of the consortium, it won't destroy the Melon Consortium. Their business empire is supported by countless mainstays. Even if the top members of the consortium fall, it won't collapse in a short time. Even if it collapses, it will become a pile of fat meat, which will be quickly eaten by other consortiums. Dudian shrugged his shoulders. Of course he knew about this. Otherwise, he would have assassinated the senior members of the Melon Consortium like how he assassinated Deacon Huey. After all, this wasn't a world where power was supreme. Unless he mastered nuclear weapons, or he was stronger than a senior hunter. But so far he didn't know whether the senior hunter was the limit of human evolution or not. Therefore, if one wanted to destroy such a giant financial group, one would have to rely on commercial suppression, and commercial suppression would also involve various industries. The other party was like a towering tree that had been growing for decades. Its branches and leaves were dense, and its roots had also penetrated in all directions. If one wanted to uproot it, one would have to pull all its roots out of the soil. The amount of effort needed was self-evident. However, a consortium was the product of decades of operation of dozens of families. It was the condensation of countless wisdom and painstaking efforts of several generations. It was extremely difficult for a single person to overthrow a consortium. It was no less than the uprising of the common people in the old era. The same day, Dudian returned to the Temple of Elements. He spent about 30,000 gold coins to find a senior god to buy a bottle of Fountain of Life. He owed the senior god a favor. The Fountain of Life was stored in a small glass bottle. The liquid was green and full of vitality. Dudian shook it a few times. He felt that it was mucus. He was curious, as he didn't know what was used to make it. But it was different from buying drinks in the old era. There was certainly no formula or raw materials written on it. Even if he inquired about it, it would be very difficult to know. Moreover, the Temple of Elements would notice it. Chapter 264. Dean followed the instructions and unscrewed the cap. He poured the water on his left arm and smeared it evenly with his hand. He felt that the smell of the fountain of life was like the juice of flowers and plants. At the same time, there was a very obscure smell of blood. It was difficult for ordinary people to smell it. In addition to the smell of blood, there was a little rotten smell. The volatile odor particles were even rarer. Even he needed to carefully sniff to find it. If ordinary people have knife or sword wounds, they only need to smear it on the wound. The fountain of life will stimulate the rapid metabolism of the necrotic flesh and blood. New flesh and blood will grow and heal the wound. A bottle of fountain of life can be used more than 10 times. Dean poured out half of the bottle and smeared a layer of it on all parts of his left arm, including his fingers. It looked like a layer of oil, exuding a strong fragrance. Looking at the quiet absorption and volatilization of the fountain of life on his left arm, Dean was a little worried. Although he could burst out with power beyond his physical strength without feeling, but the damage to his body was also great. Moreover, in the fierce battle, it was difficult to control the weight. This was extremely fatal in close combat. In the future, he could either completely give up close combat and specialize in long-range archery, or he could wait until his left arm recovered and immediately strengthen the control and exercise of his left arm. When his left arm was unconscious, he could still control the strength to a fine degree. If I only practice archery, I can improve quickly. But archery is mainly for hunting outside the giant wall. If I am assassinated inside the giant wall, or in a head-on confrontation, I still have to rely on close combat. Dean thought of many hidden dangers. He secretly decided to strengthen the exercise as soon as his arm recovered. 3 days later, "Doctor, are you sure that the bones have completely healed? Will there be any hidden injuries left inside?" Dean looked at the middle-aged man and his assistant, a 15 or 16-year-old girl. These two were the ones who had treated his arm in the past. The middle-aged man was concentrating on suturing Dean's left arm. His head was full of sweat. When he heard Dean's question, he answered without lifting his head. "I have checked. The bones are hard and the cracks are completely healed. As long as you continue to recuperate for a period of time, you can completely recover. But it is recommended not to do strenuous activities in the near future." Duddy nodded. If an ordinary person wanted to confirm whether their arm had recovered or not, they could roughly understand by the feeling of pain. But he couldn't feel it, so he could only ask the doctor to skin his arm and see the bones. As a result, the arm would inevitably be traumatized. But the wound caused by the surgery was an external injury. Soon, the middle-aged man completely sutured Dean's arm. He put the blood-stained gloves and needles back into the operating box, exhaled lightly, wiped the sweat on his forehead, and looked up at Dean, only to find that the teenager's expression was calmer than his. Although he had been injected with anesthetic, so he would not feel pain, he was not frightened by the bloody scene of the surgical dissection. He secretly smiled bitterly, got up, and said, "Don't touch water with your left hand recently. If you feel itchy, please be sure to resist scratching it to avoid infection. I will come over regularly for anti-inflammatory and examination. If there are other abnormalities, you can inform me immediately." "All right." Dean leaned on the bed. "Thanks for your hard work. Take care." The middle-aged man smiled, picked up the suitcase, and left the room with the girl who was looking at Dean in surprise. The next day, Dean's left hand was wrapped in bandages and fixed on his shoulder. He went to the room on the second floor of the Rhine Castle. After dispersing the servants, Dean looked at old Feline. "Have the procedures been completed?" "Yes." Old Feline took out a stack of bulging envelopes from the drawer. "Everything is in here. The people you want haven't escaped, so it's easy to bail them out. Now you just need to go and pick them up." Dean nodded and took the stack of envelopes. "I'll go. It's too far for you." Old Feline glanced at his arm. "Your hand, it's healed. Just waiting for the stitches to be removed." Dudeen smiled as he put the letter into his arms. He turned around and went downstairs. Old Feline escorted him to the carriage that the butler had brought. He waved to Old Feline and ordered the coachman to set off. In the frontier of the commercial district, there was a low-lying hidden place. The periphery was covered with thorns and weeds, and in the depths of the jungle was a plain with lush green grass. In the middle of the plain stood an ancient castle that was more than 10 meters high. Outside the castle was a spacious blue lake that reflected the silver-gray radiation clouds in the sky and the blue sun. This was the first prison of Sylvia, Thorn's Flower Prison. Warden Jones and Butler Peter were standing on the balcony in a gorgeous office on the top floor of the prison. They were looking at the thorns and flowers at the end of the plain outside the lake. Jones whispered, "Do you remember the kid who escaped from here?" Peter smiled. "I don't think the people in this prison will forget him." Jones didn't know whether he was happy or angry. "Do you remember how long it has been since he escaped?" 2 quarters. Peter faintly guessed something. "I heard that he joined the New World Consortium established by the Ryan family. Are they the guarantors of the 5 dirty pigs that were bailed out today?" Jones nodded slightly as his eyes flashed. The Bourong family had sent this kid to prison. But they weren't able to kill this kid in 2 seasons. Instead, he was sent to the Temple of Elements created by the Holy Church. It can be seen that we made a big mistake. This kid should have the strength of an intermediate hunter when he was sent to prison. In fact, he should have the strength of a senior hunter. Peter was startled, but soon understood why Jones had such an inference. If he didn't have such strong strength, then he would have been killed by the Bourong family. Wasn't he just 13 years old when he was sent to the prison? Peter couldn't help but ask. Although he was in his 50s, but he remembered every criminal that had been sent to the prison. Jones nodded slightly. His eyes were deep as he said, "He has such strength at the age of 13. The Bourong family didn't know that this kid is extremely patient and good at disguising himself. If the Bourong family doesn't get rid of this kid as soon as possible, then maybe in the next 10 years, they will fall in the hands of this kid." Bid was surprised. "No way. Bourong family has been in business for several generations. Their businesses are spread across all walks of life. This kid is cunning and deep, but in front of a colossus like Bourong family, he won't be able to do anything. If he is smart, he will reconcile with Bourong family. Otherwise, reconciliation is impossible." Jones whispered, "Don't you know what kind of life is like in the prison? If this kid becomes a senior hunter, then the Bourong family will be in danger." Peter nodded. "It's too difficult to become a senior hunter. Moreover, it's hard to predict the life of a senior hunter. Even a senior hunter has an amazing chance of dying outside the giant wall. In front of a monster, no matter what kind of conspiracy or trick is useless." Jones saw a small black slowly appear outside the plane. He whispered, "It's coming." Dean lifted the curtain and looked around the plane. He recalled the rainy day when he escaped from here. His whole body was wet, and he had to stick to the grass to escape from here. After a moment, the carriage came to the front of the lake. "Stop. Please show your proof." The guard at the bridge shouted. If he hadn't seen the noble flag on Dean's carriage, then he would have destroyed the carriage as soon as it was detected by the watchtower. Dean opened the door and got out of the carriage. He took out the letter from his arms and handed it to the guard. The jailer took it and opened it. After a moment, he looked at Dean and said, "Come with me. Don't look around on the way." Then he took Dean along the corridor to the prison. Dean stepped on the road and looked at the lake on both sides of the stone road. There were more than 10 meters long shadows swimming in the lake. If someone fell into it, even if he was a senior hunter, most of them would be dismembered and die tragically. Suddenly, he felt someone was watching him. He looked up and saw 2 figures standing on the balcony of the top floor of the prison. The first one was a middle-aged man in black clothes. He had thick eyebrows and a cold temperament. Behind him was an old man with white hair. He had a gentle expression, but his eyes were faintly sharp. Dean guessed that these 2 should be the warden and his servant of the Thornflower Prison. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.